What's up, good people? Welcome to the Grown Man Hour. I'm your host, Bernard Riley. You saw the thumbnail, you saw the title. We will be joined by Ike, and I just got his name right, and I'm about to botch it already. we just call him Ike. You know how that go. But I did want to get the name right. Ike Ogiamien. Ogiamien. That's how you say it. I just got it right. So shout out to Ike. I'll definitely be bringing him up in a little bit. I want to thank everybody who's making it in today. I see a lot of people already dropped a comment. Make sure you hit the like button on the way in, whether you're catching it on the after it uploads or whether you're catching it live. Make sure you're hitting the like button right when you come in, and let's get this thing started. Let's get ready to go. You know what time it is.
Peace, folks. This is X from TPOT Media. Open your mind and wake your black ass up. You know what time it is. Hit that damn like button as you make your way in the door. Grab a seat, settle in, get ready. It's the Grown Man Hour with your host, my man, Bernard Riley.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Mumia Obsidian Ali. You know who I am. I need no introduction, right? And you're listening to the Grown Man Hour with my man Bernard Riley, heard weekdays right here on YouTube. What do you think about that? How about that? Now let's get back on with the show. Thank you.
All right, what's going on, good people? Welcome back to the show. Welcome back. I'd like to thank everybody who made it on in here. We're going to be joined by Ike momentarily, but you know what I like to do as usual. Like to thank those that make it in bright and early. Drop a like or a comment right before the show even gets officially started. I appreciate that. Got Snuggles668. That's a weird name. Snuggles668 in the building. Shout out to you. Omega Dread is always coming through with the early comments. Malcolm in the middle, 87. So basically, you're saying Africans versus FBA. You know, I'll be behind late to the party. I don't know what FBA stands for. I don't. So no, haven't said that yet. Haven't said that. Ike dropped a comment bright and early. Who else we got in here? Aaron B in the building. What's going on? We have Ayo Kimmy. I hope I said that right. And she goes on to say, I don't like the term better. I love the term better. But she says, I don't like the term better, but I pray you share your views with kindness, respect, compassion, and empathy, as the subject can be controversial. That part I agree with. It can be a controversial subject. And if you know anything about Ike, you know Ike's a very, very, very stand-up guy. So he's the person that I'll be interviewing on this. And you know, Ike, he's a solid dude if you know anything about him. So we don't got to worry about that. But that is a reasonable concern, because the last time this conversation was had on my platform, it did get a little, kind of some jabs were getting thrown, and so, but no, I found somebody who can really have a very, very sober conversation about it. I think I succeeded in that one. So Cajun raised in the building, sole provider. He said, okay, what's going on? He says Naja gang. That's there you go, sole provider. You be talking over my head all the time. I never know what sole provider talking about. Okay, I guess Ike got to explain that one as soon as I bring him up, because he apparently know what you're talking about. I don't see. Y'all talking over my head. Boomer Sooner, what's going on? Was Tampa Supreme? I thought I blocked you. Anyway, so shout out to everybody that made it in the building. Shout out. Salute everybody. All right. Without further ado, I want to bring up the man of the hour, Mr. Ike Ogiamien, in the building. What's going on? Glad to have you here.
What's going on, Bernard? I am glad to be here. The pleasure is all mine, sir.
Yes. It's something that I've been planning on doing for a while. I dragged my feet on finally getting the email to you. Then I finally reached out and you responded promptly. We made this happen really fast. So definitely glad to have you here. As I told you in the email, I'll go ahead and formally say it on the air that you have a wealth of knowledge and information, and you're very valuable to this space with all the cacophony that goes on around here. Somebody like you coming in, dropping your knowledge, wisdom, and insights on it is definitely a good thing. So glad to have you here. The first thing that I want to get into, well, first let's get a few things out the way for those that don't know, even though we talked about this be off the air, but you are from Nigeria. And how long did you live there? Just to go ahead and do the breakdown of that.
Yeah, so a brief history of myself.
Yeah.
I was born and raised in Nigeria, Edo State, Benin City, to be specific. More and more people are getting more well-versed in geography these days, so it's not out of place for me to be that specific. And I was born to the Ogiamien family. It is it's a royal family, right? And Ogiamien means like the owner of the land, so on and so forth. So that kind of gives you a kind of a flavor for the kind of background that I'm coming from, okay? And it is a very, very big family as a result, right? I have family members all through the world. Now, I lived in Nigeria for first 17 and a half years of my life, right there in Edo State, Benin City. And then I moved to the United States in 1999. Towards the end of 1999, I was in New York, stayed there for about a year, and then I came to California. I lived all over California now, Southern California, Northern California, where I'm currently at. So that's a brief, broad stroke history of where I'm coming from.
Okay, good. Yeah, see, I learned something, just learned something new right there listening. So you talk about royal family. Elaborate on that, because here in America we don't know what that is. We don't know what that is. So what do you explain that when you come from a royal family?
So you can check out the Benin Kingdom, the ancient Benin Kingdom, right? And these different kingdoms, as you would expect, will have kings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there will also be chiefs. So the patriarch of my particular family, this is way, way, way back now. In other words, we can trace ourselves back like to the 11th century and so on and so forth. There is a standing building that is still there, the Ogiamien Palace. There is at least a few walls of it that are still holding up from the 11th century, right? Mm-hmm. The particular patriarch took over a particular area of the city, the main headquarters, and he held that and fought with the then ruling family, right? And he was able to establish himself. It was a coup, okay? He took over, and then they negotiated a treaty whereby he is still recognized as the owner of the land. And then when any new king comes in, there's a ceremony they do a mock battle, and then they do the treaty where the guy gives the guy being whomever the chief is in my family right now, the head of the family, if you will, gives a piece of earth to the king and says, yes, I'm giving this to you, blah, 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 and my son will do the same, and on and on. So there are a set of chiefs and a king, and each of these families, the family of the chiefs and the family of the king and so on and so forth, have their own particular dynasty and reasons why they can be considered a royal family. They have their own particular roles to play. And what I just described was the role of my family and how it came into being.
Wow. That is a lot there. That's a lot there. Michael Ross, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. Kill Deuce in the building says, Bernard interviewing royalties. This is coming to America in real life. I was just about to say I'm interviewing Prince Hakeem over here, but yeah. Thanks for the super chat, Kill Deuce. I definitely appreciate that. Everybody who supports the show, and I appreciate everybody who supports the show by just simply hitting the like button. Make sure you are hitting that like button. I'm pulling up the stream right now so I can hit the like button myself because I probably haven't done it yet. So I'm telling everybody else to do it. There it is. 95 people in here, 42 on the likes. Make sure you're hitting that like button. Now, Soul Provider said something in the chat and you co-signed it. What was that? What were the two of you talking about right there?
Soul Provider is a Nigerian. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
So short form of Nigeria is Niger. Well, I'm saying it with the Nigerian accent, right? Niger. So that's what he's saying. Niger gang. He's getting the chat riled up in there. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, I assumed it has something to do with that, but I never know with Soul Provider. It could have been some next level of nerddom that I didn't know about. So so that's why I was a little curious on that one. So I put it in the thumbnail. I branded you high value man. So we're going to start out talking about that. What's your view before we merge into the main topic? We got a few different topics we're going to get into, but since I branded you high value man in the topic, you can't run from it. So we got to talk about that. What's your views on that? Because if anybody's high value around here, it's apparently you, man. You. So we gotta hear your thoughts, views, and ideas on that, the whole phenomenon of it, and then the actual reality of it, because everybody talks about it nowadays. But I think obviously when you break it down, a very small percentage of people actually fit the bill and actually live it. So just go ahead and speak on that, either starting from the phenomenon of it being talked about online, and then you can go ahead and speak to the actual life of it.
Okay, so one thing that you just mentioned there is that a small percentage, okay, and I would like to just reiterate, this should not be anything new, especially as men. We understand hierarchy, right? And just because you understand hierarchy, you also know that, okay, yes, there's a top of the pyramid, and not everybody is the best at everything. Not everybody is Tiger Woods at golf. Not everybody is Usain Bolt at running, and so on and so forth. And we are fine, generally speaking, again, as men with hierarchy. That's kind of how we roll, okay? We don't have no problem being led by Sergeant Slaughter with the eye patch into the battle. He's the man, I'm going with him, okay? So let me just make that clear at the onset, because there tends to be this kind of an idea of, oh, well, if I'm not part of a hierarchy, or if I'm not in a position at the hierarchy that I like to be, okay? If I'm not in a position and on a hierarchy that I would like to be, I'm not in the position I would like to be, then I got to destroy the whole hierarchy. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way. And then you're talking about the broad concept of high value. I like to take things from a philosophical, historical perspective. In other words, as broad as possible. So let's bring in the concept of class, right? Because you can see how they're kind of related, right? They're right next door to each other. We're talking about high value. So about class. Okay, class over here in the West, or you can go to the Far East. You could talk about India, and you could talk about the caste system. Okay, and you always have on the top, you would have the Brahmins, let's say, which are the priests / the intellectuals, or over here you would call them the priests, which were the intellectuals. The monks, for example, were the first to create musical notation. St. Thomas Aquinas in the Catholic Church, and so on and so forth. In other words, you take a few steps back, a few hundred years back, you would understand and see why priest / intellectual class were one and the same thing, right? And then below that, you had the class of the princes and the warriors. These were the protectors, okay? Prince and warrior, same kind of thing. That's why if you kind of look, let's say even in the 1800s, or if you go back, emperors, wore military garb. Okay, that's why a lot of Roman emperors died at war or died through other violent means. They actually took risks. So the lords, the barons, so on and so forth, took a higher amount of risk in order to take that position. Generals will fight from the front. We know this, right? We understand. So you have the priestly / intellectual class, and then you have the warrior / princely, priest / intellectual, and then warrior and prince. Below that, you have the commercial class. Okay, the class of merchants. And then under that, you have workers. That's generally, even in the caste system in India versus also in the West, that's kind of how it is. In modern times, part of the modern revolution, the modern political revolution, the whole Project of Enlightenment, so on and so forth, involved the overthrow of the priests and the princes, okay, by the commercial class. You could call that capitalism, if you will. In other words, the merchants overthrew those people. That was the economic face of this whole Project of Enlightenment. There are many other faces of it, the political face, the philosophical face, and so on and so forth. But economically, now the merchants are on top. And hence, the virtues that are required for being able to be effective in merchant stuff. We call it work ethic or the Protestant ethic, right? Hard work, frugality, so on and so forth, those kinds of things. And so in other words, being able to be accepted within that group, in other words, being of value in that group, showing your value for a certain amount of time, right? And these things can be measured. That's another reason why, let's just say it's an attribute of the particular values of this particular class. In other words, you can measure it. Okay, you can say, okay, well, I've been making this amount of money for this amount of time. I am actually effective within the group and I'm accepted in the group. In other words, now the virtues of the merchant class are now on top. This is just the world we live in, right? It's not like, we're not looking to the priests and so on and so forth. So there is pushback. And pushback, it will not be surprised that pushback is coming from people who are trying to use priestly values and say, well, how about your morality? That's the one thing you hear, right? People say, well, I'm a moral man. That's the immediate kind of knee jerk. They get triggered by this high value thing, the way it is presented these days. And again, it's presented from the point of view of the merchant class, as I just described, nothing new. And then someone will say, well, I'm a moral man, though. But the problem with that is this. Number one, you shouldn't be saying it, right? If you are indeed one. And then number two, there is no independent way of verifying it writ large in the society. In other words, back then you could say, okay, well, he's a monk. He's living a life of asceticism. He is a priest. He has given up marriage and so on and so forth. He is living the kind of life where we can say this is a holy man, if you will. And then you have that hierarchy and you can play in that hierarchy. But it really doesn't exist, or at least it's been reduced. The scope of that hierarchy has been reduced. And then you have the pushback from the princely / warrior class. And that is people come in and say, well, but I'm an alpha. I'm an alpha. F all that, high value money, this. I'm an alpha male.
I gotta take a time out on that one. Okay. Elaborate on why you called the people that are saying, hey, I'm an alpha, I'm this, I'm that. Why did you call them the princely / warrior class? I do got to hear your thoughts on that. But Evie Now 23 dropped a super chat. Appreciate that. And she just says, Ike. Thank you, Evie Now. Appreciate you. And we also got my man Pablo Frescobar in the building. I got a question for you. So hold your thought on my question and we're going to answer Pablo's question. He says, Ike, have you ever thought about doing your own show? I see you on Kevin's show. You are late to the party, Pablo. Ike already got a channel. Moderators be dropping spam the chat with Ike's YouTube channel. Spam it. Every time I look down, I want to see it in there. I want to see it. Okay,
I'm going to drop it first in case anyone doesn't have it there. I'm just going to say in the chat right here, my channel, and then the moderators can go on from there. Okay.
Right.
So that answers that particular question. And then to your question about why I'm calling them that, well, it is the people that are trying to use the values in that particular hierarchy. In other words, valor and being a real man, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem, though, is that we know Mad Dog Matt is a badass alpha male. he has been accepted by that group and he's doing that thing. You just standing here and saying, I'm a badass alpha male, in other words, claiming the warrior princely class. That is why I'm saying it, because it has to do with valor. It has to do with patriotism and being a man that is above and beyond for glory, for Sparta, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
That is what they are claiming. But unless you have some troops behind you, and in other words, that hierarchy still exists, you can go in there and prove yourself there in those grounds, and then you will not have to say it. Okay, so claiming the princely stuff, the warrior stuff, I'm an alpha male stuff, you having to say it is a little shaky. Also, you having to say I'm a moral man when, you know, granted, the scope of that particular hierarchy has been reduced in our society, and you're not, you know, the bishop of whatever, or you cannot necessarily say I'm a monk or so on and so forth. You know, that is why it is problematic, because it is not independently and objectively measurable. However, the values of the merchant class who took over the prince and the priests, right? And we were glad that they took it over. We're like, yeah, we don't want no king and no whatever over us. Like, you can hear many people out of the other side of their mouth, right?
When did the merchant class ultimately take over the prince? I mean, the priest or all of that? 'Cause when you say that, what I just hear, I'm just hearing capitalism. When you say the merchant class took over, so but was there like a specific moment in history, or is it varies from place to place? Because we never had anything like that in America. So yeah, go ahead and break down that.
The whole American project. Okay, you can talk about the American Revolution.
Okay,
fighting against King George.
But
the French Revolution tends to be a seminal moment. The French Revolution is one that was it was one of the first big terms of battles of let's take down the church / the king, and let's replace it with something more egalitarian. And that was how it was sold. But it was the merchant class saying, you know, free exchange and, you know, equality under the law. It's all about. So that was the economic face of what you could call the Enlightenment. Now there is a scientific / philosophical face which says, hey, church, stop stopping my science. Okay, I am Isaac Newton, I am Galileo. I want to create a space for free inquiry, and I don't like the church doing that. So that was the kind of the scientific / philosophical face. But call it the Enlightenment, if you will. Okay, and if you want to pick a moment, you can pick the French Revolution, at least out here in the West.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Speak on that. That's one of my. I don't talk about my channel isn't about that, but that is one of my pet subjects that I do enjoy. Like when you talked about Isaac Newton fighting with, you know, the religious overlords, so to speak, about how he wanted them, you know, out of his science or whatever. That's one of my favorite subjects. Could you elaborate more on that and how that more or less connects?
Okay, so basically, when you say it connects, because we started here talking about high value, and I talked about, okay, well, we have to talk about hierarchy, and yes, the priest / intellectual class was on top, the priestly intellectual class, and then below that you have the warrior / prince class, and then below that you have the merchants, and then below that you have the workers. Same thing with the caste system and so on and so forth. I'm saying that the merchant class, from an economic perspective, took over these other two, but things tend to have not more than just an economic face. They also have a scientific face, a philosophical face, and so on and so forth. So basically, there needed to be a space for science, a space for truth, a space for quote unquote rationality. Okay, the ancients, because the question you asked is fairly broad, like how does it all connect, right? Okay, so allow me to be broad.
Yeah, go ahead.
The ancient philosophers, for example, let's say Aristotle, Plato, so on and so forth, when they talked about rationality, they did not try to, they spoke about it in terms of ideals, okay? They did not try to actually instantiate their ideas or even claim that it was instantiable in the current political regime. In other words, they left the political regimes alone. They never said, hey, because rationality in terms of, let's say, logic, Aristotle didn't really invent logic, but he systematized and formalized it a long time ago, okay? But he was never saying, now you got to take down the system that any system that says, go worship the gods, right? Actually, Socrates was killed, okay, because presumably he was kind of balking the system in that way. So generally, the ancients kept things on the ideal level, even if they're talking about rationality and science and so on and so forth. They never challenged the political system. The Isaac Newton, when it came time for like the Galileos of the world, whom they're imprisoned because the church, one way or the other, both of them started stepping into each other's fields. Either the church started stepping into the field of science, or science started stepping into the field of church. We started seeing clashes. Galileo is a little nexus point that we can look at, right? We know the story, right? He was in prison, so on and so forth. They told him not to say that the earth, goes around the sun, because the church started establishing certain scientific truths. So now that these two entities started getting into each other's lane, if you will, a clash was inevitable. And that was the other face of this same kind of revolution. I said again, the economic face was the merchant class taking over the prince and the priest. The philosophical face was the realm of rationality, the realm of philosophers coming out and saying, okay, you priests cannot play in our realm anymore. We have our system, and we're going to be allowed to do our scientific method the way we choose.
Right. Good stuff. Now what's interesting here is that you more or less have been talking about high value for the last 15 or so minutes, and there has been no mention of women. Now, why is it that so many people get that wrong? Because even everybody's talking about high value because of Kevin Samuels. So when I talk about it, I tend to work from his definition on, just because he's the reason he got the buzz and of the term going on in this space. So I just view his platform as ground zero. That's just how I view it, for the sake of conversations on the internet about high value. But when we talk about it, even though in his definition it was no mention of women, when you just talked about it here, no mention of women. But so why do everybody get it wrong and think that it all has something to do with women?
People have women on the brain, man. Like, look.
You think, and that may speak to the main topic, the difference in the mentality of people. Because I know African American men, we're driven by the box.
You said it. I didn't say it. Okay, I mentioned hierarchy. I mentioned men. I talk about Sergeant Slaughter and Mad Dog Madison, so on and so forth. This is the realm which we play in. It's a world of men. Yeah, and the only place where women come in is that women watch the hierarchy game that men play. In other words, they wait at the finish line and try to take the winners and try to select the winners of the race. Whatever dominance hierarchy men has established, women try to take from that top 80-20 rule, right? That kind of a thing. Okay. So, and by the way, the kind of hierarchy systems which starts with women up front tend to end up being hierarchy systems that are dominated by aesthetics. In other words, arts, entertainment, swag, Gucci shoes, athletes, and entertainment, that kind of a whole thing. And yes, there is an overemphasis, in my opinion, overemphasis on that aspect amongst men in the African American culture. Okay, no heat, no judgment, as they say. But I'm just making a statement of fact that if you put women first in your hierarchy, okay, then it's going to be a hierarchy about aesthetics, arts, entertainment, swag, game, shoes, that kind of stuff. And there's an overemphasis on that, in my opinion.
Okay, where should women rank in the hierarchy? Where should they be placed in the hierarchy, if at all?
As I said, this is a dominance hierarchy, has to do with effectiveness of pursuing certain ends, right?
Okay.
And the women will come and try to get from the top of the hierarchy, right? In other words, they have a whole different, they're just in a totally different lane.
Yeah, they're on the outside looking in, watching men do what men do, and they're just trying to just latch on to the winner or the best one they could possibly get. They have nothing to do with the process of determining who's high value, who's not high value, who's up here, who's down there. They have nothing to do with it. They're just on the outside, just trying to bet on the right horse, so to speak.
Ideally, they shouldn't. Ideally, they shouldn't. Historically, they shouldn't. In your mind, you know that they shouldn't, right? And basically, the top dog in, again, not to over elaborate upon that, because you just pretty much summarized what I said, right?
Yeah.
The hierarchy is a dominance hierarchy about pursuing values. And if you're talking about men and the way we organize ourselves, we tend to very readily organize ourselves in that way. And we should not have any problems with that kind of a dominance hierarchy thing. That's the first thing I stated before we went into the classes, and in order to talk about the current definitions of high value men being the virtues that are required to sustain, to be able to be effective for a certain period of time in the merchant class. But whatever dominance hierarchy game you're playing, it has nothing to do with women, okay? The only place women come in is to come and try to take from the top of the hierarchy. That's it.
Yeah. Right on. So we touched on part of the mentality of African Americans. I like to say Black Americans. That's the term I like the most. But speaking to that, now, do you see a difference? And I know it's kind of broad to just say that. I put it in the title, Africans, but I know that's too broad. So you can either speak about generally about Africans or specifically about Nigerians, about just an overall difference in mentality when it comes to all of that.
Very good. So I like the topic because it's controversial, right? When you say stuff like better, you already got a comment, right? Someone was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, oh my God, it's going to be a bloodbath. Oh my God, the children. So basically, I like when things are controversial that way, because as thinking men, whenever we are triggered emotionally, we should see it as an opportunity, an opportunity to bring rationality to bear, an opportunity to use rationality to inoculate ourselves from the emotional response and let cooler heads prevail, if you will. Okay. And just amongst your individual self, let your cooler head prevail. Because when you're being led by the nose, by an emotion, it is never, you're not coming from a position of power or control by definition. Okay. So if something triggers you, if you're like, oh, there's something to learn there. Okay, good. Now let's unpack a couple of terms there. One is better and the other is mentality. Better has to do with value. Value has to do with ends being pursued. In other words, that's a very simple definition of something that is of value. Value involves ends that are worth pursuing. Anything worth pursuing, maintaining, sustaining is a value. Obviously, there are a whole myriad of value. One could even say, if wanted to be objective, infinite number of values that you could have, because you could pursue all kinds of things and call them valuable. Okay.
Right.
Now, so let's try to confine ourselves, at least to begin with, to a set of values that are being pursued, right? Set of values that are pursued, where we can then talk about one mentality versus the other being more or less effective at the pursuit of these values, right? So let's talk about some simple socioeconomic things, like let's say taking advantage of economic opportunities, taking advantage of educational opportunities, establishment of stable families. So we don't go too broad, and I don't want to get into too many statistics, because we all know how statistics work. They're not lies, but they have many, many different facets. You can look at this side and exclude that side. You can divide this number by that number, and then, you could, Yeah. So let's not. So that's, I want to keep it fairly broad, so we can, and fairly broad in the sense that these numbers are easy to kind of see. You either have you either have more stable families or you don't. You either have more money in the pocket. You're either taking advantage of educational opportunities or not. So that's the realm of value that we're looking at. And then there is the question of mentality. And I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I would say that what undergirds it all, because you talked about specific cultures, I would even go broader and to start with and say that what undergirds the mentality is the immigrant mentality. Okay. In other words, there's a context here. And I would say that the immigrant mentality is cross-cultural. The culture will flavor the way in which the particular group chases those values. In other words, one group will be doctors and lawyers. Another group is going to be more entrepreneurial, right, in terms of the economic pursuits. One group will be more insular, right, in terms of their families. Another group will be more open. One group will be more readily assimilate versus another group, right? But undergirding it all, and a term which is ubiquitous in our culture, is immigrant mentality, whether it's a Russian or an Indian or a Chinese, right? We've all heard that term before. So I would like to state that. So basically what I'm trying to do is unpack better, which we already did, value. We define some values that are being pursued. And then also unpack mentality. And I would say that undergirding this mentality is the immigrant mentality. And one aspect of it, it's multifaceted, but let's just start with one aspect of it, has to do with the pursuit of opportunities, right? They are indeed here to pursue opportunities. Hence, you can see, okay, well, someone who's here to pursue opportunities, perhaps there are things that we can learn from them vis-a-vis the pursuing of certain values, right?
You said you brought something interesting to the table when you said immigrant mentality, because well, first off, shout out to Soul Provider. He says for the Chin Chin Goat Meat Fund. What is he talking about there? Is that a Nigerian thing?
Chin Chin is a Nigerian confectionery, which is like a baked good / fried good, in that class of confections, donuts, sweets, that class, right? And it's a Nigerian, and then goat meat. Yeah, us Nigerians like goat, so yeah, he's he's doing his thing in the chat.
Soul Provider. Speaking of, I'm not going to get it. Well, I dated a woman from Kenya before. And I mentioned that a lot. It was fun because I was the first person from the continent, as we call it, that I really just got to just sit around and just talk to all day and just pick her brain about it. And she didn't like the meat here in the States. She just said it just tasted I don't know, like something was, I don't know if wrong with it or just different about it. Over there, at the continent, she said that when you got meat, it was fresh. That animal was possibly killed 6 hours ago. It was fresh meat. The taste was different, and she said she can never really just get used to it. She can I don't know the best way to explain it, but she can just taste the production in it, I guess.
Yes, you can taste the production, you can taste the hormones, and you can taste, for example, if it's cow, you can taste the fact that they were raised on corn and so on and so forth. So, there are places in the States / also lifestyles in the States whereby you can kind of get out of that. Let's say you go hunting, for example. If you go hunting and you shoot your elk, you know that it tastes different from, stuff you get in the styrofoam box in the grocery store.
yeah. She used to say, "I'm tasting the plastic that it came in." She used to feel like she was tasting all of that. But you said something interesting when you said immigrant mentality. Okay, the last time I had this conversation here, one thing that I was pointing out that the people that come over here as immigrants coming from rather Nigeria, Kenya, or whatever, those are the driven ones who rolled up their sleeves and figured out a way I got to seek out more resources. Isn't enough here. So my hard work, my work ethic, my intelligence, it can't be fully, I can't fully capitalize here where I'm at. So I got to go there. And I always felt like it was kind of unfair because those with that, as you called it, the immigrant mentality, they I felt like they were automatically the exceptional of their group. And so I always felt like they're comparing the exceptional of one group to the average of the other group. So I felt like that was always a not quite a fair comparison when they would say, well, black people have been here in America all this time, and look at where you guys are averaging at. But look at the immigrants that come over here. But I'm like, those are the exceptional from their group. Like, is that an accurate assessment when I say that?
From a point of view of rationality, right, in terms of the logic of it, makes sense. However, you cannot do like a double-blind experiment where you're like, okay, let's go bring this. In other words, to say that a group is self-selecting, like therefore they're going to represent a particular echelon of a society, is rational, but you can never know if that is indeed the truth. You get what I'm saying? Like, because in order to know the truth, that it is the truth, you need to be able to say, okay, well, let's do an experiment. Let's say if we just randomly go ahead and just bring these people over here and compare it with this other group, we have to be scientific, right?
Yeah.
So we can say scientifically, we cannot know, but logically, the hypothesis makes sense, but it is yet to be tested. And I think that one way that we can test it, for example, because you can talk about crossing an ocean, or you can also talk about just hopping the fence from Mexico, right? Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier to hop the fence from Mexico, but still, you can see the immigrant mentality in people who can just easily hop the fence from Mexico. And I would say that beyond the innate talents, because you could, let's say you measure their IQ, you measure their whatever, but beyond the innate talents, there is the idea that someone is coming for opportunities. Okay, you got to look at that. They may be representing a certain echelon, or shall I say, and they're also coming for opportunities. One, we cannot really test because of what I just said, but the fact that they're coming for opportunities, I think, is clear, and therefore they're going to act a certain way. And there's more to it that goes into the socio-political and cultural aspects, okay? But so far, we just talked about the coming for opportunities, but there's something else in the sense that when you're coming from anywhere outside the Western society, you're coming from a society that, well, let's not go there yet. Let's just say that these people are coming from a place where it's more of the law of the jungle. Mm-hmm. Okay, and this is akin to letting the fox into the hen house, right? And what do you think is going to happen when you let the fox into the hen house? He's going to be able to, not that he's good at everything, but he's going to definitely be able to kill some hens, right? Yeah. So they're coming from a place where it's more of the law of the jungle, where it's more of nature red in tooth and claw, where there's a lot more inequality, unfairness, and brutality. In other words, less of the freedom and equality and kumbaya, right? Outside the West. I don't care where you're coming from. You may be coming from India, Africa, Mexico, whatever it may be, and you're coming into, quote unquote, a Western society. You're coming from the jungle into a place where there's a more safe space created, and it is akin to letting the fox into the hen house. That is also an aspect.
Yeah, I love that term, immigrant mentality. So it sounds like what you were alluding to, that even if someone, let's just say, I don't know, has a low IQ, low skills, and all of that, the mere fact that they had the mentality to just get up and go, to try to pursue something, that means when they get here, they're going to be doing probably more than the average person that's just been here all this time, that may not have that mentality. And I would argue that amongst, and again, like you said, we can't do an exact experiment on this, but of those here, the Black Americans that are here, that are doing something, that are taking chances, that are starting businesses, or bare minimum picking up skills, picking up a trade, going to school, and working a good career, those are ones that probably would have the immigrant mentality. They just happen to be born in the place where the opportunity is, so they didn't have to leave to go get it. I think a lot of us, if we were born somewhere that didn't have the opportunity, we would probably be of those with the immigrant mentality to leave and go get it and try to strive somewhere else. But but that's looking at those that are striving here and saying that I view them as people who would have the immigrant mentality had they not been born into opportunity. I guess that's just my view on that. What did I want to say? We mentioned IQ. IQ is normally a hot debate around here. Do you accept? I don't want to. We're not going to get too deep into that. Just, do you generally accept it? Because I remember on one of the videos I was watching of yours, you were talking about how everything is on I think it was a video that we're going to get into pretty soon. You're talking about how more or less everything is on a bell curve, and people look at it in an unintelligent way, and they say that oh well, this, I think you broke it down from men to women in aggression, the varying levels of aggression between men and women. In the middle of the bell curve, there's not that much different, but it's out on the outskirts where you see the difference on the tail ends of the bell curve. And that little, like when I made a curve right here, that little tail end right there, that's where the differences are. It's a few people
Mhm.
in this space that will have the controversial conversation about IQ and bell curve and all of that. I don't like to talk about it that much, but I am one of the people who I think IQ matters, and I'm not convinced that
Hmm.
it's something that I don't think you can't. Geniuses are born. You can't just you can't create them. They're
I'm
like
not Einstein, right? I mean, I'm not as smart as he is, and I've also, for example, you have people in your life that you know that are just can do things with their mind that are way beyond what you can do. And it's not just like, oh, they studied this craft, and it's like, no, you just know that this guy has some high octane hardware going on that you do not have. And
Mhm.
again, this is talking again about another hierarchy term. I am somebody by psychological disposition that welcomes all kinds of hierarchy. I'm not a equality fiend, like, oh, there's got to be fairness and equality and on and so forth. Let me just put my cards out there on the table, my psychological cards / my political cards. I tend to lean heavy on, I don't care about equality. Doesn't mean I'm on the top of every hierarchy. I'm barely on the top of any hierarchy, right? But I'm not going to deny that hierarchy exists. I'm not going to deny that innate talents exist. There are going to be differences also between groups. If you look at the Boston Marathon and you look at who's been winning it, we know that it's not just, okay, East Africa, okay? And it's not just one country in East Africa. It is not just, it is one particular tribe living on one particular hill, okay, in Kenya somewhere, that tends to just win it all. What does that say about it? Well, why am I making that point? I'm making the point that, look, there are differences between groups. Because
Yes.
I've jumped up from the fact that, obviously there's innate talent, and anyone who's trying to say, well, everything is equal, well, let's get off that. And then now let's talk about the fact that there will be differences between groups. Okay, the fact that let's talk about them. The Ashkenazi Jews represent a high level of the Nobel Prizes in physics or whatever, right? That is a truth, okay? The same thing as, okay, this particular hill in Kenya winning all these long distance races. That is also a truth. People get triggered on the intellectual end of this kind of a spectrum, though, okay? You can say, yes, they win the thing, but when you say, oh, the Jews are winning the Nobel Prizes, like, oh, no, I don't like it. But again, in the middle of the bell curve, in other words, you and me versus the average Jew out there, the same, right? No difference. But when you go out to the tails, that's really what matters. And everybody tends to pay attention to the tails and want to then get triggered about it. Okay. But there are differences between groups, generally speaking. And I would say that I'm always welcome to more and more scientific investigation and inquiry in any topic whatsoever. And I will go with the results wherever the results lead. I'm willing to take.
Yep, thank you. I'm the same way. I'm the same way, and that's why yeah, I'm the same way. But that's when we start talking about IQ. Some of the results in the data is kind of you don't it's kind of we don't like all of it, but I do like to look at it. I do like to hear counter arguments to it. So I'm still learning when it comes to all of that. But the only reason
let me say one, I'm sorry. Let me just say one more thing on that point, which is that there are many. IQ is one parameter, and then it tracks how successful someone will be. In other words, if you take the IQ and then you look at success, in terms of being able to pursue particular ends and get things done, they correlate. Okay, people of higher IQ tend to be more successful. However, that's just one parameter. Okay, and there are different ways of the mind working. Okay, there are different ways to be intelligent. There are different ways to be a genius. And this tends to do with how you learn, okay? How you learn is very different. We know that people learn very differently. Some people are very fast learners, and then the information fades away. For example, I'm a very slow learner. You can think about it like I have a viscous, it's more like a viscous wax that moves slow, but once something is stamped on it, it stays there. That's more.
That shocks me that you say you're a slow learner. As much stuff, and I was watching your videos on your channel, as much knowledge as you have, that blows me away that you say that you're a slow learner, because I believe that about myself as well. That I have to really put a lot of time into something to actually know it. And I actually ran into that problem in school. Like if a new lesson came and we just started working on this and barely 2 days went by and I were turning over and going right to the next step, I'm like, I needed more time over here on this one. So sometimes it moved too fast, but if I actually had time, I can learn it if I take the time. But far as just quickly analyzing, processing quick, fast coming information, that's a flaw that I realized that I had, and realizing that really helped me. You know, once I realized that was a problem that I had, it helped me to not get frustrated, to not beat myself up about this. I'll just say, hey, they want this assignment done with a short deadline. They're going to get what they can get. They're going to get the best I can give them in that short deadline. So
you called it a flaw, but I would say that it is a flaw insofar as time is being measured. Okay, but time is not. You get what I'm saying? But it is an actual difference in the sense that, at least for me, and maybe this may be a post hoc rationalization, right? But for me, it is because I like to go. I need to have a deep foundation.
Yeah.
Right. I need to have a deep foundation, a basis, and you may already be able to tell from the way I answer things, right? You ask me about high value, and I start talking about the priest and the kings. This and all that. In other words, I don't just want some kind of surface. Because anyone could just repeat surface stuff, and some people are really good at that, just playing in the surfaces. I need to go down deep and plant a root down there. Find an intuition for it. If it's a physical concept, a concept in physics, for example, I want to be able to start from the intuition and then down to the visualization and then down to the charts and the graphs and then to the equations. Some people just play in equation land and they're very good. They're very quick on the equation land. Like, blah, 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 yeah, just do this and you do that and that's it, obviously. But me, I'm like, no, but I gotta get it from the level of intuition and then visualization and then charts and graphs and then equation. So it is not a flaw. It is just a different way. But if time is being measured, yes, then you're going to lose.
Yeah. Yeah. I've lost plenty of times when it was timed. Don't time me. Don't time me. Let me learn it at my own pace and I'll get it. But don't put the clock on me. But another thing hold on, wait, real quick. Coach Ali's corner in the building says, shout out to Bernard and Ike. Definitely shout out to Coach Ali. He's another brother who has a wealth of knowledge over there. Try to promote him as much as possible as well. Wayman Brown in the building. He says, shout out to Ike, Bernard, and the bros. And also, my man, let me find it. I know I saw Nick Penn come through. There we go, right there. Nick Penn in the building. He says, get the donations up, men. He says, this is a great discussion. Support your brothers. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Nick Penn. Appreciate that. Yeah, this is definitely a good discussion. Definitely a good discussion. And one of the critiques of this space, they said, higher brow discussions don't get views. And I always said that's a load of BS. We got almost 300 people in here. But
excellent.
But one thing I did want to say, the reason I brought up IQ, and I could be wrong on this, and hopefully you can talk me down from the ledge. I do think that IQ, like when we're talking about the mentality of people, I feel like IQ is connected. I think part of the reason why so many of us have a mentality where we're not, doing the things that we need to do, then you look at our test results, or rather it's a standardized test coming out of high school, rather it's IQ test. I think it's all, I feel like it's connected to the mentality that we have. We criticize the mentality, but I think it may be deeper than that. I don't hope. Hopefully, you can talk me down from that.
Yeah, I think you need to step off that ledge and this goes hand in hand with that bell curve thing that we were saying. I think that the issues are way bigger and heavier than those that will be pronounced by mere IQ differences. Okay. Mere IQ differences are going to be the difference between, you're talking about these issues that are pronounced at the tail ends of things, where it's either if you're really low IQ or really high IQ, are you going to win the Nobel Prize, or are you just going to end up being a physics professor? versus you're going to end up being a physics professor at Harvard versus your local community college. That's not what we're talking about, right?
Well, before you explain what we're talking about, this sort of speaks to it. He says IQ isn't the issue. Lack of ambition is the problem. We don't want to work for anything. But I guess my question is, do people with lower IQs tend to have a lack of ambition?
I don't think that many people no, I don't think so, because that'll be then you'll be talking about a lot of low IQ people out there, because in other words, like, because there's a large cohort of people who do not have ambition, right? Let's just say. And I don't think that there are that many people with low IQ. I think low IQ, especially an IQ below, because the military measures IQ and will not allow anyone below an 80 IQ, I believe. But there is a number.
It's in their range. It's in their range. It's in the 80s, I know.
They will not let you into the military. Okay. So it is not, and it's not a problem that, the military is not able to find people to come in because, oh my God, all these people have lower than 80. No, that's not the case. Yes, when you start going up on the echelons of things and you're talking about that top 20% of people, top 10% of people, when you step into that room and you're trying to compete with the top 5% of the people, that's when the things such as IQ now start to matter. Okay. But when you're just talking about basic steps that need to be taken towards a particular goal, no, you don't need to worry about IQ yet.
Okay.
I would say it's more a quote unquote mentality thing. Okay.
So, good. Yeah, I'm still doing some reading and research on all of this. Still doing some reading on this. But I do have my questions, and I ask, tough and controversial questions sometimes. But so far as you talked about the immigrant mentality. Let's try to go back to Africa or Nigeria, far as just the overall mentality over there. I heard I don't know if you're familiar with Mike V. He spent some time. He's a guy in this space. He's talked about how he spent some time on the continent, as he calls it, and he says that over there, I believe, hopefully I don't misquote him, but I believe he has said that there's a difference in like far as did he say ambition? I forgot how he worded it, but just what's your assessment? Do you just see just an overall difference in ambition? And I can't think of what else was said. So let's just start right there and work forward. Do you just see a difference in terms of that?
So earlier on, when I mentioned that there are going to be difference between groups, and then I gave like a physical, athletic difference, and then I talked about an intellectual difference, and so on and so forth, we have to ask, well, what is the cause of this? And if we look at the biological landscape in terms of organism, environment, and then the set of selective pressures, right? And I'm talking evolution talk. And whether you believe in evolution or not, or whether evolution happens or not, I'm just talking about, okay, good, okay. But organism in the environment adapting and dealing with the pressures of the environment. Then you have the physical environment, okay, which you could say, well, that's probably part of the whole hill in Kenya thing. And you also have the social environment. In other words, what things are rewarded, okay? You could talk about, let's say, the Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews. And you can say, well, from time immemorial, they've been worshiping a book. And I'm saying it, I'm being tongue in cheek and being kind of, but in order to be effective in my communication, right? I know they don't worship a book. Okay. But you get what I'm saying.
I like to describe it like that. That's so I'm okay with you describing it like that. I poke fun at those, but go ahead. I know I understood where you were coming from.
Yeah, it's like the word, read the Torah and blah, blah, blah. They have this whole thing where they tie the Torah to the end. Like, in other words, and then they go beyond that to the interpretation of the Torah, right? Whereby it's all about these thousands of different, whether it's the Babylonian Jews or the Ashkenazi Jews and the different rabbis and so on and so forth. And, the scribes and all the arguments. It's all about, and this book is the law, right? The word of God, the law, and the interpretation of the law, and the argumentation over the interpretation of the law. In other words, that was the top of that hierarchy for them and always has been. In other words, intellectual pursuits has always been highly rewarded in that society. Okay, that's the hierarchy game they played. That's where the women then came from and picked up from the top of the hierarchy. You were respected if you were doing that. Taken now to, let's say, the Nigerian scenario. That is generally also the case in the sense that your grandma, for example, never saw school in her life, but she highly valued education and would tell you, you gotta get, you gotta read your books, you gotta get your education, you gotta be. In other words, there was no kind of denigration of the nerd, okay, if you will, okay. In terms of your typical male bullying structure, there were other reasons to be bullying somebody, okay, but it was never because, oh, this guy is smart and he's always focusing on this and that, the other. No, the jocks, if you will, protected the nerds and they wanted to be associated with them. It's like, because we all knew where we lived in, and we all knew who was on top. And it's not your dumbass running up and down the track, right? It's not you. Okay, nobody gives a crap about you. Who is on top is the smartest person. Who's on top is the person with the most hustle, who can bring things together. So the spirit of entrepreneurial, let's say the Igbos, for example, let's get even more granular. Igbos, a particular tribe in Nigeria, and there it's all about entrepreneurship. Okay, what hustle do you have? I don't give a crap about your other skills, but can you be because for them also there's a high percentage of doctors as well. Okay, so can you be a doctor or be a businessman like next week, and show me your results? That's what it's about. Those are the values that are promoted. So again, talking about system of selective pressures, environmental conditions, be they physical environment and also the social environment, what is rewarded, and you can see the differences. I mean, it just kind of makes sense, right? If you reward rats in a lab with X, they're going to be going for that to human beings. We are mammals. We're social creatures. We're going to go with the system of selective social pressures that are around us.
Right. So it sounds like you're you're saying it comes down to culture. The culture of the people is what's seems to be more or less what's the driving force between of driving the mentality that ultimately produces the results. In other words, is that a fair?
Yeah, but the thing about culture is a very broad term that has many different artifacts in there. And to say culture because, for example, if I say, oh, well, if you are focusing on women, you're going to end up having certain aesthetic pursuits, arts and entertainment, swag game, all that stuff is going to be on the top of your hierarchy. And it's not really going to lead you anywhere in the broader world. Okay. You may be doing great in the hood, right? But nobody gives a crap about that, if you're going to be competing against China. What's your game and your swag going to get you competing against the Chinese, right? That kind of a thing. But does it mean that it is right to call that African-American culture? No. Okay. That's why I tend to, for broad strokes, but we're getting granular with this conversation, right? So for broad strokes, people throw that word culture out there, but culture is a lot deeper and bigger than any particular one artifact out of the culture in any one particular subculture that you can pick out to point out. I'm talking about systems of selective pressures. Yes, culture is the broad umbrella that you can put it under. So yes, I will agree with you in that sense.
Osama Abdu in the building with a super chat. Appreciate you. He says, Nick is right. This type of conversation is needed more in the sphere. Brother Ike, your channel is going to blow. Keep bringing the intellect and the pragmatic frame, refreshing change from the norm. Yeah, that's why I tried to get him in for this interview before he blow up and get too big for me. I wanted to catch him on his way up. Yeah, I definitely could see you speaking in front of thousands of people, man. I really mean that. You definitely got a knowledge. I recommend. Hey, his link is in the chat. Make sure y'all go sub to him. And I'm seeing new people lurking around here, so make sure you sub to me too if you're listening. And you here, make sure you hit the like button and make sure you sub to me, and definitely go sub to Ike and go and get all that. Go get that game that he given. some actual good game that you can use. All right. Where we at? This conversation is great, but the words are being said strategically, which makes me have to use my higher brain cells to understand this conversation. That's good. That's good. The Broke Genius says, supporting my interest. Thank you very much for those super chats to all your brothers that came through. Okay, I got one more controversial question about the continent. One more. Gotta hit you with one more controversial question. Why is it, and I asked this question on my show before, but it was, on a panel with a lot of back and forth and couldn't get a good, steady, focused answer. So
Okay.
I'm throwing it to you now. When you look at the Africans, whether they're coming from Nigeria or wherever, that they come over to the States, bringing over a lot of intelligence. And you talked about where, how that intelligence is cultivated, how the smart person is the person who's looked up to. That's a great thing, and we need to establish that here with Black Americans. We definitely need to establish that and flip that around. But I asked a question. They come here, they achieve this, they strive, they become doctors, they're doing all of these great things. But then when you look back over at Africa, or the particular country in Africa that they came from, it's like all their knowledge, talent, wit, and ability. I feel like, I'm not saying this from perspective like I don't want them here. I'm glad that they're here. That's great. That's great. They're contributing to this society. That's wonderful. But it seemed like, to use our recently popular political term, that why wouldn't a Nigerian want to, the very intelligent Nigerian, why wouldn't he want to stay there and try to make Nigerian great again? Or make it great for the first time? Or just why is it such an outpouring of them that just come in here with all that intelligence, knowledge, and wisdom? But I'm looking at African countries that, hey, they need that. They need you. So explain that.
100%. 100%. And there are two things that I see in what you're saying. I'll take the more controversial one first. And the second one tends to be, well, why aren't they helping? They need them, brain drain type stuff. But the first one, and I don't know if you curse on this channel.
I do a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But another political phrase, this recent political phrase, is shithole countries. I'm sure you remember that one.
Yeah.
100%. Okay, look, I agree with the phrase shithole countries. Okay, this is the truth of, Donald Trump, love him or hate him, but it's like what Eminem says, I'm giving you things you joke about with your friends inside your living room. That kind of stuff is like, look, all right, this is something anybody could say. And to shy away from a place being, quote unquote, described as a shithole is ridiculous. Because remember the first thing I said about the immigrant mentality is that they're here to pursue opportunities. What does that imply? What does that imply? That implies that wherever they're coming from, there are now opportunities there for several reasons. One big one being the big word, and I know it needs to be unpacked and granularized, it's corruption. And that's kind of, people just say that and then they go to sleep. But where a situation whereby, look, let's say if we take Nigeria, okay? Nigeria has this curse, and Russia has it too. There are countries where you have natural resources and you're cursed because of that. In the sense that natural resources, it's almost like you got this gold over here and you just have this wellspring of gold. And now what's the first thing that happens? It's about who can grab the gold, secure it, and keep everybody else from getting it, okay? You're not going to develop other capacities, if you will, okay? And you're just going to depend on this gold. I got the gold, all right? And then a small cohort of people, if they're able to, will secure all the gold for themselves, right? This is the curse of, and this is not, you can look into this particular trend with countries that have natural resources. I'm not saying it's the be all end all. I'm just talking about this particular aspect of, let's say, Nigeria, which is an area that I'm particularly familiar with, right? So you have natural resources. It's gonna be about the fight for the natural resources as opposed to the development of, let's say, tourism and other particular sectors of your economy, and on and on and on and on. Okay. And then if you also look at, let's say, Nigeria we got our independence in 1960. So we're a fairly young country, okay? And after the independence, you're going to have this kind of, up till when I left Nigeria, we were still deciding whether we were going to really be a democracy or not. In other words, a coup comes through, Abacha takes over, kind of dominates a little bit. Or you want to go back even further, let's say Uganda with Idi Amin and so on and so forth. And a lot of people that like the whole strong man thing tend to like to glorify these African dictators because they didn't have to live there under them, right? It's like the people who like to put Che Guevara tattoos or talk about Castro. Well, why aren't you in Cuba, right? So
Right.
You have corruption, you have the curse of natural resources, you have a fairly young country coming out of many of these countries are fairly young, right? In Africa, recently coming out of the independence, and then having to deal with that military dictatorship thing, go through that cycle for a few times. And then you have a situation where there is just a high level, there's too much of that nature, too much of that jungle. In other words, too much inequality, unfairness, and brutality, which is great when you come from that land, when you're a fox coming into a hen house where there's a safe space over here, you can just kill, right? But Foxland needs to be tamed a little bit, right? It's too much of nature red in tooth and claw, too much of the law of the jungle, right? Still going on there. There needs to be some more injection of fairness, some pushback of the nature through science, technology, some more establishment of freedom and equality. And perhaps because, you know, you were talking off camera about, because I have this video called Freedom, Nature, Equality, right? And I'm kind of using that
we perfectly segueing into that, yeah.
So I'm using that dichotomy right now to kind of, it's not a dichotomy, is it a trichotomy? Or anyways, using that framework to look at this particular thing where it's like, okay, we need some more equality, some more freedom, less of that nature stuff going on over there. So corruption, curse of natural resources, having to deal with the military dictator. Notice I haven't said anything about, I don't like to blame, okay? Because somebody started talking about colonialism and all that.
I am so glad that you went this far into the explanation without saying. I love that you, because that whenever I try to have this conversation, it's just colonialism.
F that.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you didn't go there. Real quick, hold your thought real quick, because I'm getting behind on some super chats. The Prophet of Thought series in the building says, peace, Brother Bernard, two sharp-dressed men bringing sharp content. Salute to the Prophet of Thought. That's another brother that y'all need to be subscribed to if you're not already. Well, I think most of my audience are sub to the Prophet of Thought. He had a good, I think that was last night. I can't even remember if that was last night I was listening. Had some good stuff going on over there. Yeah, that was last night. Snuggles 688. How did the Nigerian dollar get the devalue when in the 70s it was higher than the US dollar? Huh? Can you answer that?
The dictator playbook, okay, and it was the military, or let's just call, we did it to ourselves. Number one, okay, because we're just continuing from that whole thing about not into the blaming of people and the talking of whatever. You deal with the situation you're dealing with and you handle it in reality, okay. The military dictator or the dictator playbook in general is you come in, you take over a country, okay, and then you devalue the currency by just printing, okay. You more or less say, okay, I need to swell up in other words, I have all the assets in the country right now. How do I swell up the value of assets? Is to print money. It's what causes bubbles. Not to go into the whole, not to get into a financial thing and the Fed and so on and so forth, but let's just say, put it simply this way. When you hear about bubbles, what inflates the bubbles? Inflating of the bubbles is the influx of liquidity, influx of currency, right? By printing. These days we call it quantitative easing. They're not really printing anything. They just push a button, it just pops, right? The bubbles come up. So the dictator playbook is you come in, you grab a hold of assets in the country, and how do you inflate the value of those assets? You fill the bubble up. You start devaluing the currency. In other words, it's not that the assets are actually going up. It's not like your house is just growing in value, okay? Because if it was, then how come it could have just popped like that? It's a financial scheme. It is a devalue. The currency is getting less valuable. That's why it takes more money to buy your house. So military dictator comes in, grabs a hold of the assets, starts inflating it, and then, that's how they enrich themselves. So the devaluing of the currency is part of the corruption that we're talking about.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Hold on, I'm missing. Okay. Well, Eagle Eyes right there on the screen. He says, just sub. Good. Thank you for subbing to Ike. I'm pretty sure you've been subbed to me. I'm pretty sure you're a moderator, so I know you're not talking about subbing to me. You just sub to Ike, and that's a good thing. More of you need to go and make sure that you're sub to Ike. Big Discussion 76, Science and Technology. The brother who I keep forgetting to reach out to for a one-on-one, because me and you need to have a good brainy conversation, as I call it. So yeah, I gotta send you an email as well. I keep forgetting to do it, but shout out to you. And he says, salute Bernard and Ike. I'm loving the conversation and the honesty. Absolutely. And also, who else we got in here? Jessica X says it's not letting me post Ike's channel link. So other moderators, make sure that y'all are stepping up and posting that link. I want it spammed in the chat the whole time, the whole show. I want it spammed in there.
Thank you very much, sir.
And Charles Faulkner says, I don't want to mess up my mic. Woo! I try not to scream right into my mic. People,
Ric Flair?
Yeah. People be blowing their speakers out, yelling into their mic. Pepper P says, Black American women are the most educated in this country. It is not our culture, but personal choices. You threw out a non-fact that Black American women are not the most educated in this country, but we're not here to discuss that today. However, I had to have this like you're one Google search away from disabusing yourself of that notion. Like just literally is just type in bachelor degrees by race and gender. Just the first thing you click on will show you that statement is not true. But be that as, but we're not. That's not what we're here for today. Why did I even go there? I should have just let you live. Should have just let you live the dream. Should have let you live the dream. Why I got to be a jerk? Okay. But what else you said? It's not our culture, but personal choices. I do agree with you on the personal choices. That's what it comes down to a lot. What I try to analyze and break down is why are we making personal choices that just that's not conducive with a thriving community or society. That's what I try
because
to break.
When I established, and I'm sorry if I'm interrupting here or
go ahead.
Your flow of the super chats, because when we established we unpacked the word better, we talked about value. Let's establish the ends that are being pursued. We talked about education and economics, right? And so far we've been hovering around those. But the third one I said was, establishing of stable families, which therefore bubbles up and creates compound interest on the education and the economy, right? But the choices in that regard are completely separate from whether you're educated or not, right? And I would say, right, because you could be educated, not educated. I'm saying that as an individual, okay, I'm not talking about trends in populations. As an individual, right, you could be educated or not, but you could choose still to value family. You could choose still to establish families and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And that is it is a parallel track. It does not have to be correlated. However, the data does show it is correlated. As people then get more affluent, societies get more affluent. Not only does the rate of reproduction go down, but families tend to disintegrate, right? And I'm saying that the immigrants coming from the East, if you will, or outside of the West, still have that whole, you have to not, okay, you're responsible for yourself. You're responsible for your family that you're going to start over there. And also you're responsible for making sure that your family that you're leaving behind, okay, gets some of the winnings as well, right? So there is still a strong emphasis on family and that personal choice, whether you're educated and getting the money aspect, the choice of how do I value family? How do I focus? And this is a focus now on nature as opposed to freedom, okay? Because family binds. Family is a nature thing. Family is not going to allow you to just do whatever you want, okay? And family is not an equality thing either, because there's going to be roles. There's going to need to be definitions, okay? And so on and so forth. So this is a moving backwards into the kind of a nature thing, which I think a lot of the immigrants tend to already have coming relatively, right, compared to coming into the West.
Mm. Good stuff. Good stuff. We were, we were almost getting into the topic. We were starting to segue into the other thing that we were going to talk about, a stream that you did that was titled Freedom versus Nature versus Equality. And that we just so happened to segue right into it. I kind of thought we would, and we ended up doing it because you were answering the question about when I guess I'll just say it in the most reckless way possible. Why aren't Nigerians concerned about making Nigeria great again instead of, you know, the way I'll word it reckless, and then you can correct me. It seems that the best of them are coming over here or going other places all over the world and being great over there. It's like they need to be rebuilding. You talk about all the many different reasons, and you didn't mention colonialism, what I like, because that's how people muddy the conversation. But you gave some good answers to that. But you ended up talking about
I'll talk about tribalism before I talk about colonialism. In other words, the hatred of the different tribes and the killing of ourselves and the denigrating of ourselves. Tribalism in Africa is a huge thing. Before I start talking about the white man, the white man, the white man.
Yeah, that was good. You gave a good fresh take on that. We kind of got distracted by super chats and some other things, but wherever you were at, and you were right on the cups of segueing over to freedom versus nature versus equality, and how that connected to your answer to my previous question. So you can go ahead and start from there.
Okay, I've already mentioned, corruption, curse of the natural resources. I mentioned tribalism, not being able to unite as a nation. And over here, I would then maybe take a step back to say, well, because these nations were not natural, you know what I mean? Like, so I mentioned that, I'm coming from a royal family, a kingdom was established, Where is that kingdom? The kingdom is now within Nigeria and also spread out into the next country over which is the Republic of Benin, whatever. So those would have been the natural nations to arise. Okay. In other words, if you allowed the bloodlines, the tribal lines, and so on and so forth to form nations, it will not look like this. It will not be this nation of Nigeria, whereby you take these people from over here, you take nomads from the north with a Muslim influenced desert kind culture, mix them with these people over here in the east, mix them with people over here, draw a border around them for the purposes of British colonialism. Okay, so that is the only level which I'm going to mention the colonial thing, in the sense that these are not natural nations. A lot of the nations in the world which were drawn by the British, and it's not an African thing, okay, many nations were drawn by the British. Pretty much drew the map of the world, okay? And they just kind of put people together that generally were not naturally going to progress being together, or they needed their own time to form their own natural nation. So hence you have that tribalism thing. Okay, now I'm going to continue down the line about this nature versus equality versus freedom thing by saying that, reiterating what can be learned from the immigrant mentality, if you will. Mm-hmm. So generally speaking, that number one, that there are opportunities in the United States, okay, and this whole kind of let's put the United States down is
right.
That's not, it doesn't get you anywhere, okay. It's not getting you anywhere. People are coming in here for opportunities. The way the outside world looks at the United States is not the way in which certain people want you to think the outside world looks at the United States. In other words, people love America, folks, okay. Let me repeat that. People love America, okay? Inherently so. Not just inherently so, especially when compared to the other people whom could be dominant, okay? We would prefer the Americans are dominant than some other people. Let's just put it that way, okay? And this is ubiquitous out there. You could go to Ghana, go to Nigeria, pick the average person, say, hey, would you rather an American come in here and build a factory than some other person? And they will tell you, America all day. We love the Americans. We love the American way, the American culture, the American it's called soft power, right? Which is, your culture, that kind of an export. America exports a lot of culture, and we love the culture. We love actually the Constitution and what it stands for. Hence, we're coming here to chase that life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and property that it said. So that is number one. Learn from the immigrant that there is something to be valued and to be proud of about this particular country. The other one is emphasis on responsibility, and this will slowly start to segue into the that whole freaking nature thing. So emphasis on responsibility rather than rights. Okay, over here, rights, which are emotions, which is what is due to me. I know my rights. I have the right. It starts broadly speaking, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and now all other emotions become right. I have a right to be to a safe space. I have a right to not be offended. I have a right to healthcare. I have a right to not feel like you're better than me. Rights. What are you going to give me? Me. You can learn from the outside world and emphasis on responsibility. What is the burden that you're going to take on for yourself, first and foremost, because you're a big enough burden, okay? Before you start looking outwards, okay, because that tends to be a disaster, because a lot of people, especially young people, are like, oh, I'm going to look at the community and the community and the community and oh my God, the this and the patriarchy or the matriarchy or whatever. It's like, no, you get your S in order first, okay? You're a big enough burden, so lift your load first. Look at yourself first, as opposed to what is due to you. Start looking at what you're responsible for. So an emphasis on responsibility rather than rights. Discipline over self-esteem, okay? In other words, rather than, we should feel good. Now, this is a general trend of the political project of the West. Rights and democracy tends to then lead to an emphasis on self-esteem and so on and so forth. Fairness and so on and so forth, okay? Discipline, okay, which is more on the nature side, because nature doesn't give a damn about how you feel, okay? The jungle does not give a damn about how you feel. It's about how effective you are, okay? And to be effective, you need to be disciplined, okay? So disciplined over self-esteem, and stop talking about, we need to make the children more, give them more self-esteem in the schools. Like, no, they need more discipline in the school. They don't need more self-esteem. Go to jails. Jails are filled with people with very, very high self-esteem, okay? It is not, self-esteem is not the problem. Okay, people don't fall off the beaten path and go buck wild because of lack of self-esteem. If anything, is too much self-esteem and too little discipline. So, and then there is the giving up of the give up that whole nobility of being a victim. Okay, because
you're speaking my language now. Yeah,
it is. Oh, I'm a victim. Oh, it gives me attention. Oh, I have been wronged. Therefore, I am right. Just because you have been wronged doesn't mean you are right. It is only pity that makes people allow you that way. Pity is patronizing. It should be disgusting to you. It should be disgusting to you that you are standing on that I'm a noble victim crap. Okay. Now, this is me stating my own personal perspective. I understand that there could be other perspectives. It doesn't mean I'm saying, everything is relative and so on. No, I'm planting a flag here and say that you should be disgusted by the kind of patronism and pity party that is called for when you say, listen to me because I'm a victim. No, you need to give that up. And that is, again, just going down the line about things that we could learn from that kind of immigrant mentality. And the other thing is economics over politics. Okay. And I kind of touched on that when I said people are always trying to look outside. Like, how could we political power? Let's go march. Let's go sing. Let's go protest. Let's talk here. Let's talk there. Let's take this person down. Let's cancel that person. It's like, dude, where's your money? Where's your organization? Where are your, right? Economics, money talks. The rest is BS. Money talks. The rest is BS. It does require political movements to get certain things done. Yes, but money will get it done even quicker. And how do you get that money? You buckle down, take advantage of opportunities on the ground, you establish families, you bubble up. And then, number one, you're going to be insulated, first of all, from whatever political concerns that you're concerned about. And then secondly, you can just throw some money on the table to change things that you want to be changed, okay? And then there is the understanding that you should not be so insular. And I know I'm mentioning many things. People can go back and watch the stream if you want to go through all this kind of stuff.
You're doing good. You're cooking right now. Go ahead.
Don't be so insular. This is something that is true of all Americans in general. America is kind of bordered with two oceans. and we tend to, in America, think that the world is America. Hence, you look at the African American context, there is a kind of a thing where everything is black and white. Oh, that's what white people do, or just what black. It's like, no, the world is not black and white. Hence, you know, carrying yourself a certain way, speaking a certain way, and doing certain things is not a white thing. It is a question of universal competence. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There is a whole world out there outside of black and white, which America tends to have in the brain. Okay. There is a bigger world out there. There's an international business language. There's an international business competence and international competence in general in terms of hierarchies. And it's not, oh, now you're doing the white man's thing because you're doing that. It's like, no, it has nothing to do with the white man's thing. And also, let's put historical context so we can squash this whole thing forever. Look, what we call the Western universal culture right now mainly kind of happened in the Mediterranean. Okay, what do I mean by that? I'm talking about Egypt, North Africa, the ancient Mesopotamia, the Greeks, the Romans, and so on and so forth, right? You know that area that I'm talking about, okay? And basically, I'm saying this, that there's been so much cultural appropriation in that area. So much, I conquer you this century, you conquer me next century. Okay, the Greeks took some stuff from the Egyptians, they formalized it in a certain way. The Romans come and they conquer the Greeks. The Romans then go through their dark ages. The Arabs come and they take Aristotle and they interpret it into Arabic, and they are the stores of that information. Okay, and then the church comes back later and takes the Arabic stuff, you know, St. Thomas Aquinas, so on and so forth, and then reintroduces Aristotle to that whole Mediterranean scene, which is what is the scene of universal Western culture, has nothing to do with black or white. Okay, the nations I just mentioned and that whole Mediterranean, and the reason why is because you have the sea bordering these continents, and that's why, you know, they're able to do a lot of cross-pollination, right? People are able to cross over and do a lot of conquering and cultural appropriation and so on and so forth all through history. Hence, it is not a thing where it's like the American context is a very tiny slither of time, okay? This culture we're talking about is universal culture. We're not even going to the East with the Indians and the Chinese, where then Genghis Khan was able to connect these two things together, the East and then the Mediterranean world. In other words, squash that whole thing about thinking everything is a black and white thing. Even the culture that you're looking at right now, universal Western culture, is the Mediterranean culture. And it has a long history of going through everybody, passing the football around, making their contribution, taking from this and taking from that, taking from the other. So overall, and now we're going to translate into or transition into this freedom versus equality versus nature thing.
Wait, hold your thought right there. Hold your thought right there. Snuggle668, he says, in your culture, what are the roles of men in the household and in the neighborhood, or is that none of that is none? Oh man, hold on. None of that, it just comes natural. You understand the question that he's asking there, and I just reached the part where I reminded that I need glasses. I'm holding out. I don't want them, but that got real blurry on me looking at the screen for 2 hours. But
so the nature thing, in the sense, okay, it is more natural, but also cultural evolution and natural evolution or biological evolution go hand in hand. They influence each other and so on and so forth. One tends to be faster than the other. In terms of cultural evolution, tends to be faster than the biological evolution. But yes, the man is a stronger upper body strength, so on and so forth. And also, yes, he is more of fodder, right? More useless, if you will. You throw him into battles, you kill them off, you protect the women, right? To nest. Yes, he is the one that is more responsible for building, generally speaking. Now, let's talk about, let's say, my grandparents. And they were both polygamous, okay? So they had many wives, both grandparents on either side, okay? And the woman had a sphere and the man had a sphere of influence, okay? And what they did. And there was a lot of diplomacy in terms of when these two spheres intersect. I am not answering the question directly in terms of what the roles were. I answered it broadly speaking in the sense that, yeah, we know, protect and provide and so on and so forth. That's kind of, in other words, the natural thing that we would think it is, okay, right? he needs to provide. He needs to go out there and kill and bring the meat home. The woman is nesting. That is the role that is kind of expected. Okay, and they do expect you to provide, and you should be fine providing as a man. Okay, because it will come back and bite you in the butt. By the way, if you think that you're gonna try to, if you try to do the thing where, okay, maybe I'm gonna go 50-50, or I'm gonna play into this modern way, it will bite you in the butt. Okay, trust me. Now, the spheres of the man and the spheres of the women were different, and they both had power in their sphere. I think that a huge thing that was done, okay, in the modern project in the emancipation of women was the destruction of femininity. It is rather weird, and I know that there are many facets of this, but I'm saying this particular facet in order to be provocative. I'm saying that, look, you're saying that you want to emancipate women, but you end up saying that femininity, in other words, women, are bad. That is what the project said. It said femininity is bad, masculinity is good. Where is happiness? Happiness is in a cubicle. Where is happiness? Happiness is going to compete with the men in their hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, whatever sphere you had as a woman is useless. That's what really is being said. Somebody sold women a bill of goods that happiness is in the cubicle. Happiness is going out there and competing with men. The thing that you did, which was more in the social sphere, more in the nesting sphere, right? So on and so forth, and making sure that the peace was kept in the branding of the man, if you will, like the establishment of the respectability of a man, because a man is not respectable, responsible, or trustworthy. And this is fine. As men, we know this, until he's responsible for others. In other words, I can't trust you as a single man. Or in other words, I can only trust you at a certain point. Okay.
That's controversial around here.
If I see you with a woman next to you and children next to you, then I can be like, okay, cool. He has something to lose. Us men, and this is something we should be proud of. We don't, generally speaking, we don't have anything to lose. We will risk it all for glory. We will risk it all for Sparta. We will, again, as I said prior, fodder thrown into the battlefield, useless, generally speaking. But when now you have a family and the child and the woman, and then the woman is responsible for the branding, they do put that social face on it. So that whole sphere has now just been denigrated and says, hey, everybody go to the cubicle. The cubicle is where the happiness is, and so on and so forth. And I just wanted to mention that because it does bear upon the whole question of roles that was asked by Snoodles.
Right on. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good men came through. He says, off topic, but it's on record. President Obama influenced the Nigerian elections that led to Nigeria having President Buhari, who is doing terrible. You don't got to really elaborate on that one. I guess you can concur, agree, disagree. I don't know.
I'm going to leave that one alone.
Yeah, I want to get back to where we were going, but I didn't want to get too behind on the super chat. Appreciate everybody who support this show. So I definitely had to push pause into action when you was cooking real good. I had to push pause into action to get these super chats going. Kadesh Shaya, I hope I said your name. Kadesh Shaya. Hopefully I got that right. Ike is spitting fire right now. Self-esteem will come later. Discipline is what's needed first. Hashtag in the victim narrative. Yeah, I got quite a few streams about talking about the victim narrative and the whole victim mentality, and we got that bad. Black Americans, we got that really bad. And you said something perfect that I'm going to steal from you. You said, just because you were wronged, it does not mean you are right. Woo! That's deep. That's deep, because people feel like if something was done wrong to them or something was done wrong to their people, they feel like whatever their reaction to it is, whatever that reaction is, they feel like that reaction is right and justified and completely morally sound. And no, just because you are wronged, it does not mean you are right. Man, that's I'm going to be using that. I'm going to be using that one. Tank Johnson in the building. He said, I can appreciate Ike's perspective. Great discussion, Bernard. Thank you, Tank Johnson. Appreciate that. I think that covered it on the super chat, and hopefully you held your thought from the first time that when I cut you off when you were when you're talking about nature versus what was it?
Freedom.
Nature versus freedom.
Nature versus freedom versus equality.
Yeah.
And I think that now we could just kind of approach that particular subject formally, because
Yeah.
we've kind of circled around it and used it as a rubric for talking about the prior conversation. Now, what is this thing, nature versus freedom versus equality? Basically, it's basically saying that these are three values, if you will, especially in modern political speech, modern political rhetoric, modern political thoughts, or you just look around you. Yes, we talk about freedom. We want freedom, right? We want equality too, some kind of fairness, and let's say established as equality under the law. Okay, but it really is about fairness. And then also we want nature. We want things to be natural, maybe from an environmental point of view, or also from the rather intuitive point of view that we know that when we step away from nature too much, things go wrong, right? We are after all natural and so on and so forth. So there are these three values, but they are opposed to each other. Okay, in other words, let's take nature. Nature constricts, nature confines, nature defines. Nature is opposed to freedom. Freedom says A can be B and can be C at the same time, but nature says no, A has a nature. Okay, and over here in this corner of YouTube, we tend to be very nature oriented in certain regards, right? So we're like this nature and that nature and female nature and male nature, right? So that is a defining thing. It kind of removes freedom. So we can kind of see how this opposition works. And also nature balks against equality. There is no equality in nature, right? Whether you take the galaxies or the stars or the planets or the human IQ or human prowess and so on and so forth, there is no, look, nature is jagged, okay? It is not smooth and even. It cannot even work. Natural processes need potential. In other words, they need a difference in potential. They need difference. Okay, so that's kind of how nature works. Nature balks against freedom. Nature balks against equality. You take freedom, for example, and we can already see that freedom is often the freedom to be unequal, right? If you just, without pushing down to create equality, and you just allow the natural inequality to show freely, things are going to be unequal. And also, if I let you then take your personal talents and your personal resources to pursue certain ends, the result is going to be unequal. Hence, so if you say freedom, inequality is going to happen. Okay, so that freedom and equality are against. So basically, you can kind of see how these things play against each other. And then equality is anti-freedom and also anti-nature. Okay, right? In order to create an equal situation, you need to suppress nature and you need to also suppress freedom. So this trichotomy, if you will, is something that the modern political project tries to balance. All political projects need to take into account. And different people, let me just use the example of this particular one person, okay? Here's one person in one conversation. In one sentence, they will say, I'm for freedom. I am for a woman's right to choose. I am for birth control. In other words, yeah, we can see that. You're using technology to kind of push away nature, right? And you're using technology to kind of say, hey, nature has been cruel to us. Let's use technology to kind of create some freedom for us, okay? And then in this next sentence, they are for nature. They're saying, hey, for human beings, let's curtail your freedom. Don't build where the caribou is. Don't build the pipeline over there. Let's protect the lizards and you get the idea. Now you're against freedom and you're for nature. And then in the third sentence, you're for equality. Maybe it's some kind of a socialist argument they're given about how, equality of, and it could be even a philosophical argument like, oh, relativism, cultural relativism, or relativism of ideas. Everything is equal. Okay. So first they talk freedom and then they talk nature and then they talk equality. This is inevitable. Okay, but you need to know that these three things exist, and you need to know which realm within which you're playing, and also it should have a sobering effect on the venom in your political rhetoric, because you do participate in freedom talk, you participate in nature talk, and you participate in equality talk. It also but it just depends on which level you're at. To state my own particular preference, I tend to go more on the freedom and nature end. Okay, and equality is at the bottom of the hierarchy for me, okay? I am fine with inequality, So they're just formally introducing that thing there. I don't know if you had any questions on it.
Oh no, you were you were doing good. I was content just letting you keep going because when I watched the video that you did on that, you spoke for I think you spoke for like 1 hour, at least 1 hour uninterrupted. That was a part that I saw on that. And I normally have questions when somebody is going that long, but I was able to just sit back and just listen to that. So that was yeah, so that was good. You can expand or elaborate some more on that. Well, no, well, in the video you talked about how, and I guess you indirectly alluded to this, how quote Thomas Sowell, there's no solutions, there's only trade-offs, and how it's impossible to get you can't have a perfect balance of all of those things. So I guess you can
Yes.
expand on that a little more. But real quick, before you do that, also Dart the Low IQ sent a cash. Yeah, hold on. He said something goofy. I gotta make sure I read it. Or with the name like Dart Low IQ. He said, just paying my low IQ dues. Thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate that. And Counselor Murray came through right as I was talking, says, salute BR and Ike. Definitely salute to Counselor Murray as well. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. But yeah, I guess we could talk about the no solutions, only trade-offs. The area that where it comes up has been coming up a lot in this space lately. And you touched on that when you talked about how women thought it was ideal for them to be in the cubicle. And we're finding something odd that's happening right now. And there's been studies on this aside from this space recently talking about this. Kevin Samuels has sparked a lot of conversation about this, that you have women making a certain amount of money, and then they're saying that, oh, well, man has to make that same amount of money or more. They want men to basically make more money. The money that the man was making before, when the man was just providing and the woman wasn't working, that was enough. But now that the woman is making the same thing, give or take, now she wants that man to make even more money to make her happy. But if he made more money, then they got to hear about the wage gap and why are men being paid more and all of this. So you want men to come back down, and then now they're not making enough to take care of you. It's like there's a weird thing where there's no solutions, there's only trade-off, and so that's what I heard a lot coming out of your discussion when you're talking about
100%.
Yeah, nature versus equality versus freedom. So I guess you can elaborate more on the no way to get you can't have a perfect balance of all of those things.
Yeah, and the common phrase that people say is, you can't have it all. And that phrase I don't think it's powerful enough, because people just hear that and then they just ignore it. It just goes in one ear and goes out the other, right? But they don't really understand that, no, in a granular level, in the level of both, even when you wake up in the morning and the fact that you have 24 hours in the day, the fact that you are a human being and then you're going to die, the fact that you cannot be everywhere at the same time, the fact that you cannot be in every era at the same time, in other words, this is a nature thing, right? In other words, there is a natural universe out there. You have a nature, you are an entity. This is 100% already beginning to constrain you. The matrix within which you live, the biological matrix, the cultural matrix, the matrix of your senses, right, is constricting. Okay, you cannot perceive the entirety of the universe. The universe comes to you by mainly blocking out most of it. Okay, in other words, right from the very beginning, trade-offs are being made. And I don't think people understand this. Again, your biology, you are finite. You will not live forever. You cannot be all over the universe at the same time. You are not God. Your perceptual framework is constantly blocking out things. Even from that very beginning, trade-offs are being made. And it just even gets tighter and tighter as you go from there. So if you want to bring it into the socio-political sphere, and generally why I like to talk about trade-offs is because I think that this is a good way of looking at everything. So for example, beyond the freedom, equality, and nature kind of trifecta, you can look at, let's say, versatility versus efficiency, right? You cannot and to put it this way, jack of all trades, master of none, right? It is very efficient to be a master of one thing, but versatility is also very important, because versatility is what is going to make you survive long term, right? So it's like, and you cannot be infinitely versatile and infinitely efficient. It's not possible. You're going to need to give up one or the other as you go along. So that is another set of trade-offs. Another set of trade-offs has to do with, let's say, innovation versus institutions, or shall I say the individual versus the group, or change and breaking the mold and busting out of the matrix versus the need for a matrix. In other words, systems and institutions are absolutely necessary. Okay? Habits, if you look at a human being, habits are absolutely necessary. Systems, institutions are absolutely necessary. Otherwise, nothing actually works. And by definition, a system is going to stray away, or is going to be different from the goal. So on the one hand, you have goals and innovation and pie in the sky, if you will, but it needs to be instantiated in the real world. And the real world has hard edges, and it has mediums which you're going to have to play with. In other words, you cannot mold everything out, or carving versus molding with clay versus granite versus steel have different things that they're going to have different pushback on you. So the human being and human society is not infinitely malleable. You cannot just dream something up in the sky and then bring it down to earth. No, there is a human society. Humans have a nature. Okay, and this is talking about that nature thing. Again, I'm a big nature guy and a big inequality guy. Okay. There is a nature to human beings and human society. So you can dream up stuff in the sky, but you have to instantiate it in reality. And to instantiate it in reality, it needs to be a system. It needs to be a matrix. And by definition, the system will not be perfect. So you need to understand that there are trade-offs between the system and the goal. Some people are always talking about goals. I have a goal for this. I have a goal for that. I have a goal for universal equality, human rights, and peace and prosperity, and this and that, the other. But guess what? Until you tell me the system under which that can be best instantiated, you haven't really said anything. You haven't really done anything, and you're generally wasting your time, because you need to bring things into reality, into time, for them to be sustained. And the only thing that sustains stuff is systems and institutions and tradition and so on and so forth. So every once in a while, you'll have somebody that's inspirational. Moses goes up to the mountain, brings down tablets. Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, somebody comes in and shakes something up. Okay, that is a momentary thing. Still, there needs to be some kind of a system. Okay, Judaism or Christianity or the Civil Rights Bill or whatever, that needs to then say, how do we actually make this work? And it will never look like the goal. It will never look like the goal, because reality actually exists.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. I put the link in the chat for people to come up for questions for Ike, and apparently Alonzo Hall in the building got a question for Ike. Go ahead. You got the floor. You got the mic. Welcome to the show.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Ali, for bringing me up and having these types of shows and the continuous content that you provide to us. I'm a fan. Nice to finally have the opportunity to speak to you. I often see you on Kevin Samuels dropping a lot of bombs. So one thing I wanted to ask you, as I guess a bit of a later bloomer, I work in insurance and financial services as well as real estate in the city of New York, and I'm licensed in 5 states for insurance. The story of how I got to this position, long story short, I got shot in front of my mother trying to be 50 Cent and ended up being 25 Cent because I only got shot 5 times instead of 9. At least I made somebody smile. At any rate, so I wanted to speak to, I'm encroaching on
you
my
don't
40.
sound like you was a gangster out there. I mean, you got the soft, pleasant voice. I mean, you sound like you used to read bedtime stories to children. You sure you was out there in the streets like that? I mean,
Listen, bro, I could show you the bullet wounds and tattoos as well.
all right, man. I take your word. I take your word. All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'd rather not be associated with that stuff anyway.
Hmm.
However, what I want to ask is, so my fear is this: I feel like I'm failing forward in terms of what I do for a living, and I'd like to actually be able to reach the demographic of people my age, etc., and make it exciting. For example, when I speak to people about their financial foundation or the foundation of their financial house is what I sell, life insurance, especially from an experience of being shot 5 times in front of my mother 3 days before Mother's Day. So with that, I take it very personally. But I'm wondering, is there a way that I can increase my own confidence and assertion or assertiveness and broadcast this as well as make it simpler for people? Like, for example, on my YouTube, people ask how much is life insurance. So I equate it to, I ask how much is a Mercedes Benz. If you buy an A class, it's different than if you buy an S class. Then if you buy an AMG, it's even different regardless of if it's an S550. But if it's an S550 AMG, that adds more cost to it. So it's the same thing with a life insurance policy versus a term or an index universal or variable universal. Sorry, I'm rambling. So I guess my question is, how can I be more concise, less rambly, and garner more attention?
Good. This sounds like a sales question, like an influencing question, like a presentation question, right? And I do have content on that. That is one of my passions. Okay, I'm a musician. Okay, I'm a performer. I have a YouTube channel on that as well.
Recording.
Pardon me?
I said I went to the University of New Haven for music and sound recording, but I dropped out. But my favorite topic ended up being macroeconomics instead of any of the music. Hence why I'm in financial services now.
I mentioned the music thing because as a performer, as a woman, that's whenever somebody says that's always funny. But as a performer, I've learned a lot of things, okay, that apply to something else, which I now do, okay. I have an business engineering company and also do technical sales, right? So I've been able to translate a lot of the information that I have performing into how to present. And also another thing of mine is meditation, master your subjective consciousness. All these things intersect in the sense that you're trying to have a hypnotic effect on people. Okay. So I would ask you, how much sales training do you do?
I actually do quite a bit. Prime example, when I worked at Macy's Herald Square, I started in the cellar. And my first client was Sunny Anderson, and I sold her $400 worth of Wusthof knives. I then moved up to the furniture and mattresses department because I wanted commission, and it was paying better. That was 2008. But what I did was, behind the scenes, to become a better salesperson, I did consistent study of the products that I sold. For example, the cookware, which, for example, with Analon, as you mentioned, being American, I promote American-made products. So I would promote All Clad, which is expensive cookware.
Whoa, hold on.
Sorry.
So I asked you a question. How much sales training do you do? You asked how to be more concise. How do you think you could have more concisely answered that question?
I do a lot of sales training, usually at least a book a month.
Good. So you see what I'm saying, right? The added verbiage, the 2 paragraphs and so on and so forth. And there is a way to kind of wind that, okay? Sales is about simplicity. In other words, all communication is about simplicity. Why? Well, why do you think simple slogans work? Well, one is that is the intuitive answer, okay? And I can be elaborate since I'm trying to elaborate upon the answer to your question. But the main key here is simplicity is your guiding light. Okay. Simplicity is your guiding light. Why? Number one, it is intuitive. Obviously, simple is easier to digest. Okay. Hence, pa-da-pa-pa-pa, I'm loving it. Oh, want to get away, right? That kind of a thing. It's in your head. It's easy to remember. You can continue to pound it in, right? You can repeat, repeat, repeat. Simple is repeatable. Simple and repeatable stick in people's heads. Okay. Also, being very direct is simpler than being indirect, would you say? Right? So, point is, simplicity, again, we're not going through a whole coaching seminar here, right? So I'm just trying to be as valuable as I can in the short time that we have. So I wanted to kind of gauge something. That's why I asked you the question and then you were answering and I stopped you. But simplicity seems to me to be the one thing that I will tell you, okay, to always have that be your guiding light. And the training aspect comes into play in the sense that you should be able to diagram in a very simple way, whatever elaborate scheme that you have, elaborate production, elaborate communication that you're trying to cut across, you should be able to put it into one sentence. Now, that one sentence could end up being a whole shelf worth of books. But if you cannot put it into one sentence so that you can repeat that sentence, reiterate that sentence in chapter 5, you say the sentence again. Chapter 6, you say, hey, you remember the sentence that that kind of a thing. So again, simple slogans because they are easy to remember. Directness is also simpler than being indirect. So you have to be able to say, hey, I got your attention. Hey, here's my intention. And hey, here's the big claim that I'm making. Hey, I got your attention. My intention is to sell you this knife. It'll save you 10 hours every night in the kitchen. In other words, I just made one sentence that says, hey, attention. Hey, my intention is to sell you the knife. Hey, the knife will save you 10 hours in the kitchen. Now, this could be then lead to a very long conversation. You get what I'm saying? So I would say, you asked, okay, how to be concise. I would say that use simplicity as your guiding tool. And simplicity is about being direct and not so indirect. Make sense?
Understood. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Lonzo. Gonna bring up my main man, Complex Design, in the building. What's going on, Complex? Thanks for coming on up. I don't know if you got a question for Ike or just a comment on everything, because I love your commentaries, but you could ask a specific question for Ike, or you could just give your thoughts on what's going on. But Al Boogie in the building says, pleasant voice doesn't do, but his gun. Okay, all right. I see what you just. I'm moving on. That was funny though. That was funny. Thanks for the super chat. Al Boogie. We got to keep it moving. Complex Design, go ahead. You got it, man.
Hey, good morning, Bernard. Ike, good morning, man. How you doing?
I am fine, thank you. Good morning.
First, I wanted to just give you a heap load of props. I was listening in earlier in the morning. You were just basically speaking to the importance of intelligence from a cultural standpoint. These are things I've tried to espouse from various angles, and I guess it's more receptive to an American audience if it comes from a voice that has a pleasant accent. So I wanted to basically just give you kudos, right? Because like I said, man, speaking on things like intelligence and intellect and why it's important and all of these various things, it's one of those messages, man. It really depends on the messenger. So I appreciate you for extolling those virtues. I guess my question or comment here, so I curate a platform on YouTube, the Black Brain Trust. We've been pushing a technocratic agenda that basically connects, from a technological standpoint, connects ADOS, Africa, and the Caribbean, right? And there's an actual sort of there's a trade organization formulating, right? The AAU, African American. It's basically a union that ties the Americas, the Caribbean, and the continent together. I wanted you to basically just kind of speak to your position on how you see something like this working in the 21st century. I honestly feel like in order for particularly like ADOS folks, to kind of get over this cultural hump that we can't seem to quite climb over. We're going to actually have to wipe the board and start over. And I think adopting a technocratic ideology is the way to go in terms of going into the future. And I know that right now in Africa, because we've covered it at length, it's essentially a clean slate there in terms of tech. And there's money coming in from all over places. Various parts of the continents are their own Silicon Valleys. You know, this is kind of what's starting to take shape here on the continent. I wanted to get your view on this, how you see what's going on there, and then how you see us kind of all kind of formulating like this neural network of businesses and services and things that we can export and import to each other.
Good. So with regards to the Black Brain Trust and your union, you're already a few steps ahead of what anyone like me could actually or has actually already done. However, I could give my reaction to it, and it will be from a perspective of my own particular psychology, my own particular makeup, and the way I tend to look at things.
Absolutely.
The clean slate thing that you mentioned kind of resonates with me in the sense that there should always be, it goes hand in hand with that thing that I said, which is economics over politics. When what will be the opposite of a clean slate, for example? The opposite of a clean slate will be, let's say, some historical baggage, some political, dare I say, what's the word I am looking for? Political loyalties, right?
Mm-hmm.
Needing to, in other words, group, right? More of a group focused kind of thing. And the thing about economics is about free exchange amongst the willing parties, okay? Willing participants exchanging value for value without having to talk about the group. And the group that you mentioned, let's say the union, will be a union of people whom are willing to participate in this economic endeavor. So I would say that I definitely commend that kind of an approach. Clean slate, union, and then a focus on economics rather than politics.
Politics, right? Your economics should drive your politics, don't you think?
100%. Well, for the most part, because it's one of those trade-off type things again.
Right.
In the sense that, because a lot of times people say, and I don't want to go too far off here, but people say, oh, people are not voting their economic interests. But economic interests are not the only interest. People also have identity interests that may be group identity or a personal identity interest. For example, you may say, my identity as a man and an individual will lead me to vote against handouts, even though I need it. That kind of a thing, right?
Right.
So
we've seen a lot of that around here. Yep.
Yeah. So generally speaking, people are more complex than that, and then some people will put one particular kind of identity over the other in terms of a hierarchy. But definitely, economics over politics. Okay, I definitely agree with that. And then economics means people that are willing to participate. So it's not a question of, I'm leaving people behind and so on and so forth. It's just, I am doing this thing over here, which needs to be done. Okay. If I'm building a house, it does not involve, birds. So I'm not saying I hate birds. I don't want to go kill all the birds. Stop telling me about birds. I'm trying to build a house, so I need construction plans, that kind of a thing. Right.
Right.
So, and then regarding the opportunity that is there right now, I would say that if you see, or when you see, like, let's say a China, okay, in a place, they're not there because there is no opportunity there. And I would say that insofar as people are willing and able to participate in getting beyond the, because you mentioned technocratic, you mentioned and also the space of technology, but beyond that, we need to understand and participate in outsourcing more in just in terms of entrepreneurs out here that are building things. You need to understand, okay, go out there, and O'Shea talks about this, for example, O'Shea Duke Jackson, right? You can, okay, in your, whether, I don't know, you got a YouTube channel, or, you're doing drop shipping, or you actually have, let's say, a business that, let's say, engineering in the construction world, and you can go out there by going out there, I mean virtually, okay, and outsource your drafting, your BIM modeling, and this is particular to the engineering and construction world, to Africa, right? Where you have a lot of talent, and you can get the bang for your buck. We're talking economics here, okay? Yes, pay them $3 an hour. It's all relative, right?
Well, we do that. We do that in Kenya currently, right? I mean, but it's an exchange rate thing, right? There's an actual like consortium template that we modeled out. We did a live stream on it just a few days ago, and one of the key points that I mentioned about the African continent is that there's brain capital there. There's a lot of educated people, but there's not like a Bay Area, California, Silicon Valley, right? That can harness all of that brain capital. So that's where what you're talking about comes into play, where you can actually harness it from here digitally, right?
100%.
So when you talked about outsourcing things like, so for example, like a customer service line. Something simple that it could be that simple, or it could be something more substantial. I acquired one of the first Mara phones produced in Rwanda. So I actually got the actual device itself that was, produced there and brought it back here and tested it. So there's a lot to actually get involved with there. And I think that what you just struck on it, man, like outsourcing, it doesn't necessarily always have to be China.
It does, yeah, exactly. And you mentioned customer service line, which generally people think, oh well, India, right? But now that's a big market over there, and the game is sewn up, if you will, and it's not that cheap anymore to do that. Okay, because all the big people are doing that. You as a small person, or you looking for an opportunity, a growing market, should go somewhere else. Okay, lots of English-speaking countries around there. You can go to Nigeria, go to Ghana, go whatever, and be able to establish that kind of a thing. Okay, now for example, I have I'm looking at land in Ghana. Okay, I'm looking. I actually already have like a store in Ghana, like a storefront, and these things are just to kind of. This is tangentially related in the sense that we just talked about outsourcing, okay? We talked about outsourcing, and now I want to talk about seeing yourself as a citizen of the world, which is more possible now. The trajectory has been coming ever since electricity was invented, okay? The ball started rolling towards kind of the integration of the world, okay? It's inevitable whether you like it or not. But I mentioned earlier that Americans need to be less insular from a cultural perspective, and we talked about particular reasons why. Now, from an economic perspective, you should, for example, okay, just go and Google, how can I open an account in Botswana? Okay, what will it take to get a passport over here? Okay, what will it take to do so simple things like that? Okay, what is the account going to do for you? These things are going to pull you in. Okay, it's like if you have $100 in an account in Botswana, that is the start. Okay, next thing you know, you're gonna start looking like, what can I do with this $100? Like, what is the interest? What is the interest rate? What interest rate do they charge in their accounts over there? Oh, if I do this and do that. Oh, if I invest $100,000 in an account in Botswana, I get a free citizenship thing here over there. In other words, start looking at yourself as being able to take advantage of, because look, you are living in the best time and in the peak. Okay. I don't want to cuss, but Joe Rogan has a particular a phrase that he used when it comes to like you living in the 20th, in the 21st century in America. It's like, dude, man, like you need to be taking advantage of all the opportunities that the entirety of history has been leading to at this point. And one of the big things is to kind of see yourself as an international person. So I would challenge each and every one of you, just go ahead and say, hey, what will it take to open a bank account? Because a bank account is one of those that is kind of like a simple thing. No one is asking you to travel anywhere. No one is asking you to do anything. And, we can transfer money here and there. How can I open a bank account internationally? Think of that first. And then you can maybe begin to see, okay, well, how can I outsource certain aspects of my business to these other places? And then you can go from that point of view.
Awesome. Hey, Ike, I appreciate you. I wanted to kind of take you down that road. Oftentimes, even just kind of within our own sort of venue and channel where we've largely been trying to push this ideology, you know, particularly on Black men. What I find, man, is just that it's just a lot of pushback. You know, it's a lot of pushback from people who at the same time say, you know, they really want to, you know, kind of experience, you know, life as you know, as Black people in a different, you know, in a different setting. And so it's an individual impetus, though. You literally have to detach yourself. Okay. And so when you start to take steps, like the things that you were just talking about, like doing something as simple as starting a bank account in a foreign country, you know where that road could lead you? You know, so yeah, I appreciate you, man. I just wanted to come up and have this quick little chat with you. Bernard, once again, man, appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Thanks, Complex. Appreciate you coming on up as well. See Chills with the super chat. He says mustard seeds, Ike's providing an immigrant perspective on the Black American mentality. It's an opinion. Take it or leave it. You didn't even need to, I mean, appreciate the super chat, but you didn't need to respond to mustard seed. I timed him out. He was not asking questions in good faith. He was charging Africans up with accusing, with blaming their problems on African Americans, something I've never heard of an African do. So he wasn't a rational, honest actor in the equation. I just timed him out. Chief Rocket in the building with a super sticker. Appreciate that. And Snuggles668 super chatted a question. And yeah, those of you that got questions for Ike, but you don't necessarily want to come up, you can definitely super chat a question if you wish to do so. But Snuggles668 says, does Black Americans have the economics to compete with the current people with no
or who know economics? I guess is what's trying.
Who know economics.
Okay, yeah. There is something about again, there are two things that are going on in this question here, which I find curious. People tend to talk about groups rather than you say, because I just said something. I say, hey, go find out how to open a bank account in Ghana, Botswana, whatever. What is the West African, the Organization of West African States, so ECOWAS or whatever? Is there a passport for that? What are these economic organizations that are over there? What does it take to, in other words, citizenships, residencies, and the first step usually is, I would say, like the easiest one, which is bank accounts, okay? That is a very individual, personal thing that you could literally right now, even during the chat, go to Google and just start typing away, right? And whether it's $5 you have or $50,000 that you have at your disposal, you could still do that. Thirdly, okay, the talking about a group immediately makes it an abstract conversation, right? In the sense that
I call that taking it to collective land. I call it collective land. They always say, well, as a collective, what are Black men doing? As a collective, what are we as a people doing? As a collective. And you're absolutely right. They're making it so abstract to where we'll never be able to really get any type of results. I mean, is everybody supposed to ready, march, set, go at the same? Like, I mean, no. It's but anyway. Good. Go ahead. I hate when they take it to collective land. It's okay, a better way to have the conversation. But go ahead.
Snuggles, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just I'm pointing out that aspect of your question, and I'll go from there. And to what you just said, Bernard, and to the point about collective being abstract, is Ayn Rand, one of the people that I like. Yeah, a lot of people hate her, a lot of people don't, whatever. But Ayn Rand, she said one thing, which is, look, she liked to say one thing: there is no collective brain, there is no collective stomach. In other words, there is no collective stomach that is going to have desires to push you to do anything. It has to be the individual stomach that is hungry that'll push you to do something. And the individual has to think a thought. The Black collective, as a Black man, as a collective of Black men, what kind of, because just to the question about the economic power of the African American men. You can then look at the statistics, right? And then you can start saying, oh, but this and that will never happen. But I challenge you, ladies and gentlemen, the first step to be able to broaden your horizons in this, at least in the economic regard. We talked before in the cultural/political regard. But in this regard, go find out how to open a bank account in a foreign country. Okay. And whatever they tell you to do it, try to do it. See what that means. That might lead you to then going down the route of, well, how can I get a property in a foreign country? What is required to invest in a foreign country? Like, you got Robinhood right now, and you're probably throwing $5 here or there and so on and so forth. Well, find out what's going on over there too. Because when you put money in somewhere, you put attention in, and then attention will pull you into the future that you're trying to get. So that's what I would say about that. But you are in other words, don't ask the question about, as a collective, Black men, the resources that they have compared to. It's like, no, you just go and find out how to open an account in a foreign country.
Good stuff. Royce, I saw you come up. Well, you came up. Definitely come back up if you can, if you get a chance. Put the link back in the chat if you need that link back in the chat. And Snuggles came to Snuggles. I don't know if you. Yeah, there you go. You got a wrench now. And super chatting me like 6'5". I had to wrench you up real quick. But he says, I have no problem with the way you answer the question. I just want you to answer the question. It is not a question for me. Gotcha. No, yeah. Hopefully you're satisfied with the answer that you got. Okay, we're about to go down a rabbit hole. Okay. Panther God, Ados is old. Y'all benefit off my ancestors' blood. What have y'all benefited Black Americans? I bet you I don't know. I The link is in the chat. Anybody going to come up and ask Ike some questions? I don't know. I don't know where that comes from. It's like it wasn't until I got online, and maybe you could speak on this, but I wasn't aware that there was some type of contention or strife or anything between Africans and African Americans. I didn't really know until I got online. I started noticing the conversations, and some people are coming, charged up and upset or just got a lot of, somewhat harsh things to say. I never quite understood that.
What was your experience when you were dating the Kenyan? You didn't experience any of that from amongst the families or something like that?
Well, no. I mean, our dating was it was kind of casual, but I mean, it was an ongoing thing. But I met some of her family, so like her sisters. If we were out hanging out, I met some family and friends. She told me these were her words. She said that she experienced more racism from Black Americans than what she did white Americans. Those were her words and her thoughts on that. And my theory on that is that white people tend to walk on eggshells as far as being upfront and racist in somebody's face because they have the stigma of, oh, you're racist. So Black people can walk around loud and proud and boisterous and say whatever they want to say to whoever. We tend to do that and don't care and don't look over our shoulder before we say something controversial. We're the ones we talk like the victims, but that's oppressed. But we're the ones that don't got to look over our shoulder when we say whatever we want to say. But
let me give some context here,
okay.
Because look, I like I said, I like controversy because I think it's an opportunity to introspect, look in yourself, use the mind, and inoculate yourself from emotional reactions, and then come out with cooler heads prevailing. So let me point the finger at the African community now, and let me say one thing, where there's some contention that tends to come out. Okay, and this is not going to be a surprise. One thing that I would say, first of all, like it shouldn't be a surprise that it's almost like sibling rivalry. Let's say that, people who are kind of close in one way or the other, or perceive themselves as being close in one way or the other, are going to have some friction. That's just kind of how it works, right? But then also something that I have seen is that from a particular cohort of older generation African women, okay, and their beef with African American women. That one I don't even have to explain, right? It's just like, there's always going to be beef in that area in terms of like, oh, oh, my son is, that you already see where that line goes, right? The same thing could be said as, well, African American women and how they view their son trying to get with, let's call her Becky, right? That kind of a thing. So there is that where it's like, oh, yeah, and then they bring up this whole culture thing, okay? But amongst men, it tends not to be an issue, okay? In terms of like men, we don't really have that kind of a thing. So number one, there is a generational aspect in terms of like past generations are always wanting to talk about culture of Africans now, and I'm saying yes. What was his name? Something Seeds, right? Yes, there are people who talk smack from a cultural perspective, but it was a past generational thing, and then also it tends to be from a point of view of I don't want my son to get lost into the whatever, right? Whatever they're thinking, right? That kind of a deal. Also, there is this kind of beef coming from the other side, which says, hey, how come the Africans don't join us in our political struggles? And you have to understand, as I told you about the immigrant mentality, immigrants coming from outside the West are not into politics. They're into economics. It's a different view altogether. We're not really into it. Let me repeat that. Immigrants coming from outside of the West are not into politics. They're into economics. Take the Indians, for example. They're into getting their education, getting into Silicon Valley, and blah, blah, blah. Take the Koreans, take the this, take the that. They're not really into political ends per se because they're coming from a different political tradition. They don't have that tradition of rights and protest and so on and so forth. So there is a certain kind of beef whereby you're like, well, how come the Africans are not out here protesting with us? How come the African don't support? And it's like, they don't have that culture or that tradition. They tend to focus more on economics. So to give some due, if you will, to what the person was saying, that's how I will kind of bring rationality to bear upon the topics that he brought up.
All right. Osama Abdul, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. He says, Ike, future plans for YouTube. Do you consider yourself part of the Black manosphere? Interesting question. And what do you think the Black men can do for positive growth in 2021?
So, yes, I do. And the idea is one needs to be able to bring something new. Yes, I do, meaning yes, I do consider myself to be part of that, right? But the idea is to be able to bring something new, right? And that is what you said. Oh, well, you bring him into this channel because I think you think I have something to contribute here.
Yeah, I said okay. A wealth of knowledge. Yes, you can go ahead and repeat that. You know. Go ahead.
So it's like if you go to my channel and you look at what I talk about, okay, mastery of subjective consciousness, other soft skills such as business, sales, and so on and so forth, entrepreneurship, and then intellectual / aesthetic pursuits, philosophy, blah, 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 book reviews, and so on and so forth. Okay, I am within that space, but I am talking what I like to talk about, right? So to the degree to which quote unquote Black manosphere involves certain topics, I would say no. Okay. Like I'm not constrained by topics. I have things that I like to do. I have experience that I have, and I have things that I can share. And that is what I am here to do. So that's kind of, and then for 2021, I'll repeat what I said, because also when I was talking about simplicity and so on and so forth, and repeat, I would say, well, 2021 growth, open a bank account internationally. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a small thing, but it's like, it'll lead you down a certain path and it'll open your eyes in a certain way.
Right on. We have Royce J in the building. Royce J, what's going on? Welcome to the show.
Hi, what's up, gentlemen? How you doing today, Bernard? How you doing today, Ike?
I'm doing very well, sir. How are you doing, Royce?
I'm doing good. Out here trying to make these nickels.
Indeed.
All right. Ike, I have a question to ask. Since you come from a royal Nigerian family, and we have a conversation in Black YouTube about kings and queens, I like to ask a question. I like to ask to give a brief breakdown of the West African Nigerian tribes and how they were dispersed in the Americas and throughout the Caribbean, and how you see that they influence the cultures in different places such as South America, Central America, the Caribbean, the U.S., and so forth and so on.
Woo. All right. So the tribes, let's say we're talking about, let's say Nigeria. Okay, Nigeria is the most populous, in other words, has the highest concentration of biggest population in Africa by far, right? So in other words, most black people, the highest concentration of black people on earth is in Lagos, Nigeria, for example. Okay. So that's kind of why, Nigerians are all over the place, right? It's because, Africa is a huge place, as you know, all the continents can fit in Africa, but Nigeria just has a very high concentration of people. And that's why kind of like Nigeria tends to have, I tend to compare Nigeria to those, when people ask, like, what's Nigeria like? I would say Nigeria is like New York, okay? And partly because of that population concentration, okay? Okay. Nigeria is like the New York of West Africa. And as a result, there is that kind of hustle spirit. There is that kind of, people don't like them so much. Yes, a fast-talking New Yorker might want to scam you, just like the Nigerian prince. Yes, he is trying to scam you, that kind of a thing. So there's a lot of commonality in that regard. But to your question about the tribes, okay, there are over 250 tribes in Nigeria with over 250 dialects in different languages. Okay, you go over here, you travel 10 miles, and another language. There are three major ones, and they're kind of separated in regions. Over to the north, you have the Hausa, Fulani. They're not just in let's say, in Nigeria, but they're also in Ghana, Burkina Faso, so on and so forth, right? But these tend to be more of the desert culture, if you will. They're nomadic. They herd cattle and so on and so forth. Okay. And since it's a desert culture, kind of close to Arab in terms of their way of living, their way of dressing, and also influenced a lot by the Arabs in terms of the Islam, right? So they're Islamic over there in the north. Another one in the west is the Yoruba. Everybody knows the Yoruba. We're rocking the dashikis and whatnot. That's what the stuff is from. Most of the slaves were from the west and the south. So a lot of Yoruba people, a lot of Igbo people, which would be the third large tribe, were brought over here. Hence, when you look at things like Santeria, okay, the gods like Ogun and so on and so forth, these are Yoruba gods, right? So that just kind of gives you an idea. Now moving into how the influence was spread out through the Americas, right? Over in South America and in Cuba and so on and so forth, you have still remaining a lot of the spiritual influence still there. And as I mentioned, in Santeria, blended with Catholicism, okay? But you have a lot of the festivals and the gods and all that kind of stuff still there. In America, it's a little more, the United States, that is, it's a little more complex, right? Way more complex. But overall, okay, whether you're talking about the samba drum or, 50 Cent's new track, that drum, that rhythm, that's all the West African drum and rhythm that you're hearing, okay? So again, three major tribes, even though there are over 250 of them with all these different languages, okay? Over to the north, we have desert. So generally speaking, nomads, similar to Arabs, also Muslim, okay? And then in the south, you have Igbos, Yorubas, most of which were where the slaves came from. Hence, you have gods like Ogun and so on and so forth being... Santeria is basically the Yoruba religion, which is also kind of close to my particular tribe of people as well, the Yorubas and the Edos, right? And in South America, you still have that kind of spirituality there, but in North America, it's a little different. But the rhythm and the drums can be found all over the place.
All right. Sika in Yang says, Ike, speaking facts, you will rarely see an Asian politician, but you will see them owning every nail salon and donut shop. Immigrants tend to pursue freedom via economic prosperity and entrepreneurship. I've actually covered that Asians, they make the most money on average. Their median income is the highest. They vote the least. They vote less than everybody. They're at the bottom when it comes to voting. There's a least political in this country, but they're making the most money in this country. So you can see right there a focus on economics. But thank you for that super chat. I appreciate that. We're about to wrap this up pretty soon, but I do got one last sort of lighthearted question for you, but it should be should be interesting. Justin Winfrey says, if all these black foreigners have a better mentality, I don't think he ever said all. If all these black foreigners have a better mentality, then why are their home countries in shambles? We touched on that. I would recommend you go back and listen to it, but we did touch on that earlier. I don't think Ike wants to rehash that, and I won't necessarily ask him to. But why, he said, why do they have to go to somebody else's home and say, I have a better mentality than you in somebody else's home? I don't know if you want to rehash that. I mean, we already touched on it, but there.
Listen to the stream.
Huh?
Yeah, I'll tell him go listen to the stream. We already addressed it.
Yeah, we addressed that, and he gave a good answer. I mean, I asked the question. I think I probably asked it more in good faith than you did. I think you're just trying to throw a jab. I tried to ask it in sincerity and try to get a sincere, honest answer, which I think I did. I think he did. He broke down a lot, and he didn't blame anybody else. He didn't just say colonialism. He didn't just blame whatever. He gave a solid
100% responsibility. And if I were to just say something on it, which is that the very beginning of this was to kind of take the air out of the whole, or take the venom out of the whole better and mentality. We defined it, ends being pursued here. We talked about the mentality. We talked about immigrant mentality. We broke it down. We were very systematic in the way we approached it here. And then here's somebody coming in. I'm going to stop.
Yeah. yeah. We get a lot of that here, and I try to be, patient and understand, okay, it is a 3-hour stream, but some people look at the title and then just come in charged up. Well, what about this? Come on, man. Come on. You can tell this is a sober, judicious conversation taking place here. So, but it was answered. So the one last lighthearted question that I gotta ask you, because everybody knows you from being the super chat king over on Kevin Samuels' show. Because I always ask the question to people, how did they find out about this space, the Black Manosphere, and all of that? So, like, what happened? Were you just scrolling down YouTube and saw Kevin Samuels' show and just clicked on it and was like, oh, I like this. This is cool. Or like, what was the deal? Like, how did you find this space? Or how did you find Kevin Samuels' show? Like, how did all of that come to be that would ultimately lead you being in this space with a channel?
Gotcha, 100%. And since you mentioned the whole super chat Jesus thing, there is a method to that madness. Some of it is obvious what it is, and then another part is, and the obvious part you can think and wonder why. Like, why would somebody do that? Yeah, it should be obvious.
Yeah,
but,
it is.
Secondly, there is something which I made a video called "Generosity is a Superpower." It's one of the videos that I made when riding on my bicycle. So if you look at my playlist, for those of you. All of you who will be subscribing to my channel right now, right? You guys are subscribing to my channel. Yeah, there you go. That's the link to my channel there. I just dropped it in chat. There is a video called Generosity is a Superpower. And basically, I just wanted to touch that, if you will, for a second, and then I'll answer the question about how I found the manosphere. So the idea is this. You have a fear of receiving money, and a fear of getting money is the flip side of the fear of giving money away. In other words, you have a certain amount of worship and preciousness about money. And when you have that, you never receive that thing. We know this in terms of, let's say, getting her number, but these days it's getting her IG or whatever, getting her to come home with you, whatever it may be. If you are thirsty, if you are in the position where you are needing this thing, you're not going to get it. Same thing with trying to get a loan. You need to demonstrate that you don't need a loan vis-a-vis your good credit and vis-a-vis your collateral, such that you say, well, this guy actually doesn't need this loan, so let's give it to him. He actually doesn't need my number, so I'm going to give it to him. It is better to attract than to beg. So that's my point. In other words, whenever you have a fear of something, a worship of something, a preciousness about something, oh, I gotta throw my God money, I gotta put this, I can't give this away, you're actually not gonna get that thing. It's one and the same thing. In sales, we call it commission breath. When you are desperate, okay, and I have to give many examples so that we can kind of understand the same thing applies from one end to the other. Whether you have commission breath in sales and you're desperate and you're trying to get the sale, you're not going to get the sale. If you're desperate for her number, you're not going to get the number. When you're desperate for a loan, you're not going to get the loan. The same thing applies to money. Hence, in other words, I'm talking about a psychological thing. We put psychological blocks in front of ourselves, and we're not going to take the risk, and we're not going to feel like we deserve certain things because we have a certain fear. The fear of receiving and the fear of giving are two sides of the same coin. However, the side of the coin where we have agency, where we can take action, is in the giving side. In other words, scare yourself by giving. Next time you get a cup of coffee, give a $10 tip, okay? Boom. Guess what? Now you've just crossed past that $10 fear. Next time, try to give a $50 tip, a $100 tip. Oh,
hey, I was with you at $10 tip.
But
I was like, yeah, man.
Yeah. But the point is, it's going to be stages to this game, okay? When you're past that, certain, let me put it this way: give the amount that scares you to give. If $10 is it for you, give that. You will drop your $10 barrier. You're no longer a $10 guy anymore.
Yeah,
it is the same thing. It's the same thing as getting her number or commission breath or getting a loan or whatever it may be. You need to drop the barriers that you're putting in front of yourself, because if you're scared of giving $10 tip, you're a $10 guy, and that is you need to fight that barrier by giving the $10, and then uplift yourself to the $20 guy, uplift yourself to the $50 guy, uplift yourself to the $100 guy. That's what generosity is about. Okay, now how did I find the manosphere? Okay,
real quick, let me push pause. Just hold your thought on that one, because I think I just got bombarded with a few super chats, if I'm not mistaken. Coach Ali says, Ike, what's your Cash App? Got to show some love. Somebody got it in the chat right now. Somebody got the Cash App in the chat right now, and Ike will certainly appreciate the Cash Apps. He is a capitalist. So yes.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Definitely show him some love on the Cash App end. Snuggles668 says, no matter where I go, there is Ike. He is a strategist when it comes to YouTube. Very well played, Ike. Oh yeah, I know. I'm somebody who was strategic in this whole process too. Getting in here. So I definitely understand that, but I definitely like what he broke down right there. As far as the tipping, I was just joking, even though I typically wouldn't tip, I wouldn't tip $50 on a cup of coffee. That's too rich for my blood for a cup of coffee. But I have become a very generous tipper. And actually Larry Elder, Ramil actually did something on this, on Black people not tipping, if I'm not mistaken. But Larry Elder did something on this where he broke down all the studies that showed even when you adjust for economic class, Black people tip less. It's like that's something that we gotta do better on. It's some people don't care, but I do look at it. It does look bad on our image in the whole service industry when Black people, and this is a manosphere, so let me go ahead and throw a few jabs. It was Black women who they said specifically tipped the least. They said Black men aren't as bad as women. Let me just throw that out there. Throw a little jab out there. Let me be petty, but yeah, they said Black women do tip the least, but Black men are next, and that's a problem because we talk about the bad service we get, but they did a study where they ran a fine-tooth comb through it, adjusted for everything, whether the service was good, whether the person that was serving you was of the same race as you, adjusted for economic class. They adjusted for everything, and across the board, Black people tipped less. So yeah, that's something we got to do better on. That's something we got to do better on. And I definitely make sure I'm comfortably over the 15% minimum. They put it like that. I make sure.
That is one more thing that could be learned from because let's just say Nigerians now, and you may know this thing that Nigerians do where spraying money on the dance floor. I don't know if you.
Okay, let me ask you
You
this.
know that?
I saw a YouTube video of a Nigerian wedding, and they were like throwing money at the I don't know if they were throwing money at the bride or at the something. I'm like, they're making it rain like we do.
Yeah.
They're making it rain like we do at the strip club, and I'm like, is that where we got that from? Is that like
Who knows? Are you? Yeah, but the point is, at parties, it is a thing to do, right? And there are people who actually use those special guns that the spray guns that spray money.
Yeah.
But basically, yeah, go ahead, throw money away. Trust me, just like the super chat says right there, right? And if you don't mind me reading it, he says, I always tell people, okay, my secret to getting money is by sharing it, okay? And it is not, and I like to be systematic. Look, I'm an engineer. I'm a very rational person. I like to be systematic about what I say. So when I broke down the psychology of it, I'm not just going to come on and say, well, give out to the universe and the universe will give you back. Oh, the secret, the law of attraction. No. I'm telling you, it's just like when you go try to get her number. If you're desperate, you're not going to get it. If you don't need it, look, the Bible says it to those whom, and for those of you who don't like the Bible out there, that's fine. Okay. I consume all knowledge, especially the ones that influence you unconsciously. Okay. You're a Christian, whether you believe it or not, in terms of you living in a society that is so dominated by Christian values that it is so blind to you. So you need to go look at what is unconsciously affecting you. So anyways, the Bible says this, that to those who have, more will be given, and to those who do not have, even the little that they do have will be taken away from them. This is a law of how things work. And it is not an irrational law. It's not something that cannot be understood, okay? I explained it with loans. I explained it with sales. I explained it with getting a number. The same thing is true with money. If you're precious about money and always holding it, you're not going to get it. You need to give it away, throw it away, say it's trash. You need to be able to present mastery over something in order for it to come to you. You need to be like, I am the master. I don't need it. And then all of a sudden it comes to you because it is in your mentality. That mentality will then go out into the marketplace. People will see it in you. You will take out roadblocks from yourself. You will take risk and you will get money.
Right on. Good stuff. Good stuff. Shout out to David Johnson and Snuggles668, Tampa Supreme, who I thought I blocked, but he's still here. Tampa Supreme says Ike is the African version of Kevin Samuels. Okay. I guess we'll go with that. Where else? We got somebody else in here. Green Machine. That's the one I was looking for. How can we bridge the gap between Africans and Blacks? Your thoughts on Africans using Black allocated resources for advantage in education and business?
Good. So this broaches on affirmative action. Are you reading the question the same way? Allocated resources, education and business. So maybe there's some kind of a thing that says, oh, Black people can get certain things. And if you're Black or from Africa, I don't know. How do you read the question?
Well, yeah, it sounds like he's touching on how Africans come over here and then they benefit from various programs that are, I guess, supposedly designed to help Black people, but Africans are taking. It sounds like the Africans are taking things away from Black Americans. I think.
Yeah, that's what I read. And if I were to just one obvious reaction to this is, okay, well, it's not a zero-sum game, right? And if you want to look at immigrants, coming to the United States, in terms of population, it's not a whole lot of Africans. You get what I'm saying? Okay. You can talk about, and if you want to talk about minorities and the things that are available to minorities, the Mexicans should be complaining about, the fresh Mexican immigrants coming over, right? So I would like to say that it's not a zero-sum game. Plus, you don't have a boatload of people just being dumped over here, right? That's not, Africa is far away. It's hard to migrate over here. But yes, by definition, as I said before, the immigrant mentality is coming here to take advantage of whatsoever opportunity is here. Okay. And yes, it is bringing the fox into the hen house. And the fox is coming from the law of nature and the jungle. Okay. And they will come and tear it up over here and take everything. However, It is not a zero-sum game, number one. Number two, you should therefore see that there are indeed opportunities to be taken advantage of, okay? And it is not the case that you're not able to take advantage of it because all the Nigerians are taking away all the, the reason, you get what I'm saying? Is like, look, like in engineering school, not a lot of black people, but even amongst the black people, there were a lot of Nigerians. And I don't think it was the case because we were out there taking the spots that would have been otherwise available to other black dudes, right? That's just not the case. And then there is the thing of bringing the people together. I would say that, for example, like Soul Provider said this in the comments, that they get along quite well in college. There's not a whole lot of beef. And I mentioned earlier in terms of where the beef tends to come from, it tends to come from a political side of things, whereby a lot of people are looking at immigrants and saying, how come they're not politically active? Well, immigrants are not politically active. It is that we come from a different socio-political culture where it is not about political activism. It's about money. Okay, they're here for money. Okay, and we need to the degree to which that, and I'm saying it to be provocative, to kind of make you kind of trigger you a little bit, and to the degree to which that triggers you, that perhaps is the source of the contention there, that these immigrants are just here for money and they're not here for these other things. Well, let's sit down and let's talk about it. Let's talk about economics over we've kind of talked about. Secondly, I would say that, as I mentioned before, to not be so insular as Americans in general, look into, for the fourth time, opening an account in Ghana, in Botswana, in Nigeria, Burkina Faso, whatever. Can I open an account online? Which bank can I open an account online? Oh, Echo Bank, the Pan-African Bank in South Africa. How do I get into that? I would say that will be, from this end, a good way to kind of bridge that gap.
Right on, right on. I'm about to get to that question that I was trying to ask you and told you to hold your thought on. Some of y'all are really mad about a sum total of 50K Nigerians in the U.S. That's only 50K? Yeah, that's a good point. Because I don't get why people are mad or making a big deal about that. But yeah, I don't get it. But anyway, let's get to the and oh, by the way, Silent Lamont, you need to go jump off a bridge for that super chat. Just go jump off a bridge. Cannonball or cannonball. Just do a cannonball style. But anyway, all right.
How did I find the manosphere?
Yes. How did you find the manosphere?
I've always been, from a philosophical point of view. Well, first of all, I'm one of those student types. Or as you said, oh, he's got a wealth of knowledge, right? Okay, yes, I've always been that way. I've always studied everything, right? And one of the things that I have always been intrigued by is psychological differences, behavioral differences between men and women. And this was way before manosphere type stuff. This is just in general. Okay, and also because I'm coming from a culture whereby I saw different kinds of arrangements between men and women. I mentioned before that both grandparents of mine were polygamous. Okay, so I saw that arrangement. Okay, and then I saw a generation after that, it was more monogamy and the Christian way, if you will, right? While still seeing the Muslims do their 4 wives deal. Okay, so I saw these different arrangements, different roles, and so on and so forth. And I was always quite curious because in Africa, given the fact that we're closer to, in terms of when we talk about that nature, freedom, and equality trichotomy, that there is we still believe in nature over there, in the sense that an African woman will say, yes, I'm a woman. Yeah, you know how us women are. And yes, you're a man. You get that. It's more open that way, where it's like women say, yes, we are women, and this is how women behave, right? And it's not even controversial, right? It's over here in the West where you're like, oh, what do you mean how women behave? Oh, what do you mean? And it's never on the side of men. Let's take, for example, the honey trap. And I know that I'm going perhaps on a tangent, but it's all kind of going to my interest in this whole thing about men and women, and then how I found the manosphere. Okay, the honey trap, which is how you trap men, intelligence people, right? You use a woman as bait, and then you get her, and you do espionage and through that way. This is taking advantage of male nature, right? Taking advantage of certain things that a man is apt to fall for. But however, when we say female nature, it gets all very whoa. What do you mean? It's like, well, it's kind of weird. Okay. What do you mean females don't have a nature? Oh, it's only when it's sugar, spice, and everything nice. It's like, no, 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 no. Okay. If men have their own set of vices that they're apt to fall for, women also have their own set of vices that they're apt to fall for. Okay. And in Africa, it is well known. Like we have our sets of like, oh, these are the women vices and these are the men vices, right? So coming from there and generally being a person who likes to study all kinds of things, philosophy, psychology, so on and so forth, I was always interested in it. The big mistake I made was I tried to have conversations with women over here about it. And I found that it's not very well received. And conversations, I mean, just intellectual conversations like we're having right now, right? About that kind of a thing. Okay, well, how do boys tell them how, or I try to tell them, oh, this is how boys always viewed girls, how the girls view boys. And then you get a lot of pushback, right? So going down that rabbit hole, I found Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan, okay, years ago in his first video, because you're kind of going through, if you study politics and psychology and philosophy, you're gonna, and I like Joe Rogan because he has a plethora of different kinds of guests. So I'm listening to Joe Rogan right from the early days, right from when he started, right from the beginning of right from his first podcast. I've been listening to Joe Rogan, right? So and then Jordan Peterson came in. You start listening to Jordan Peterson, and then you get recommended other people. O'Shea and Solo were some of from the first two, and he would have these panels which were quite entertaining where I think it was like Rumble Sunday or whatever it was, and everyone would come in, Sunday Rumble, everyone goes crazy, and then Solo TV through his sim tales and so on and so forth. So I found a space where I was like, oh, okay, these people here, and Jordan Peterson was more on the high intellectual level stuff, and then you come down and then Undead Chronic, Solo TV 84, O'Shea Duke Jackson. And then the algorithm takes over, and at some point, then you're on Kevin Samuel's show.
Right on. Vintage and iconic African American everything. What Nigerian cultural attributions do you think I think African Americans should include in our culture?
Okay, again, I'll just kind of let me push back a little bit on the culture thing, because culture is too big a word. It's too it's like saying how can I get a paw like the tiger, fangs? It's like, no, these things evolve. Okay, you know what I mean? Like, so culture also evolves. I'm trying to say that it is as big as biology, right? So, but I like that you said attributions in terms of you're talking about particular attributes. Okay, so the pushback was not for you, Super Chatter. It was just to say the whole culture thing is very big. But when you talk about particular attributes, I would list them off again, which is that number one, you need to understand that there are opportunities in the United States. Okay, so the whole idea of, oh, this is the land of it's all oppressive over here and it's horrible. Well, then why is everyone breaking their necks trying to come here? Okay, secondly, you need to add an emphasis on responsibility rather than an emphasis on rights. It's not about what is owed to you, but what burdens you can bear, starting with your personal load. Picking up yourself by your bootstrap, carrying your personal load, and when you can support that, and then how do I expand that to my family? How do I expand that to my community? In other words, responsibility, carry the load rather than thinking about what is owed to you. And then thirdly, discipline over self-esteem. And you can watch the stream back when we kind of elaborated upon that theme. And then giving up on the whole nobility of being a victim. Oh, I'm a victim, I'm oppressed. It gives you attention. It gives you, and it's all patronizing attention anyways. And as you said that, I said that thing, just because you have been wronged doesn't mean that you are right. Okay, so getting over that whole I'm a victim thing, because it is it is an addictive elixir, to give the devil his due. Being a victim, it's like wearing a warm blanket. It's a warm, familiar blanket. And also it makes you part of a community. We can all coalesce around this warm fire of, oh, we were victims, right? And it gives us attention. And people tend to let us get away with stuff. Get away from that stuff, okay? And then economics over politics is something to learn. And there is some pushback to immigrant communities about that. As you mentioned, oh, the Chinese or certain other people. It's like, nah, they're not really, they don't vote that much. They're not really into politics that much, but they're just into getting their money. And that this is something that I think could be in the other community. And then learn to be less insular, okay? the world is not black and white, and by that I mean literally about black man versus white man. Okay, there are universal things that are out there. Okay, and one last thing is to don't be so focused on women, gentlemen. Okay, don't have these kinds of hierarchies that are about aesthetics, about game, swag, arts, entertainments. Don't have your people that you're looking up to be bouncing balls around and or singing and dancing on stage. Okay, that is not where male usefulness comes in worldwide, and we're living in a global culture, especially now in 2021. You cannot escape it. Okay, you cannot escape the fact that we're competing with the whole world. And if what you have is, oh, how do I get women, and that's the number one thing on your mind, and therefore you're thinking about game, swag, aesthetics, and so on and so forth, then anyways, I would say that learn from immigrants in the sense that that's not what they focus on.
Right on. Good stuff. Okay, we're about to wrap this up. Somebody just popped up at the last minute. So, hey, you have a 1 minute question, and hopefully you got 30 seconds to ask the question, and hopefully I could get the answer out in 1 minute, because we got to get up out of here. So go ahead. You got it.
Okay, thank you for having me on. YouTube is a tool men use to build by exchanging information and ideas. As far as getting more bang for your buck,
Wait.
Hello?
Are you reading?
Yeah, I wrote down a quick note since
Okay, how old are you?
Touched on.
How old are you?
I'm in my 40s.
You're in your 40s?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, yes, I did jot down a quick question for Ike. I wanted to know, is men that set and enforce parameters on women's involvement in the black manosphere a step in the right direction, and why?
Ooh, that's a good question, though.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's what I was being trolled. I mean, it's still possible, but okay.
Shout out to Nicer. Yeah, no, she's not trolling. She's she's a participant in many different channels. I saw her at Solo TV 84 and other spots and so on and so forth.
Her voice, it sounds like a kid's voice. So I thought it was a kid calling. So I apologize, Nicer. I thought it was a kid.
No, I understand. I do get that a lot, and I do have a baby face and a soft-spoken voice, but I do understand, and I am an active participant in the Black Manosphere, and I will say, I do understand that time wasting is the ultimate sin, which is why if I have a question, I write it down first, and then I rehearse it in my head to make sure, if it's a valid question to ask or not.
All right, cool. That's no problem at all. Consul Murray, thanks for the super chat. And it was a good question. So we're going to go ahead and have Ike answer that question, and then we're definitely going to get out of here because we passed the 3-hour mark. So go ahead, Ike, you got it.
Men restricting women's access within the manosphere, and then is that going in the right direction? I would say that one of the powers, one of the things that men do within the hierarchies is the power to restrict or to grow, restrict or to allow. So there's you can create or destroy, you can restrict, and you can allow. As long as it is meeting the stated ends, right? Then it is 100% fine. So it is not a question, I would say, Nicer, about a general statement that could be made that applies to all, where it's these people going in a specific direction. If they tell you their reasons why they're restricting this, then I would say it is fair. The reasons should be evaluated on their own merit. Okay. And then if you have, let's say, other people, and the manosphere, non-manosphere, okay, well, the borders are blurry. Some people say Kevin Samuels is not in the manosphere, that kind of a thing. Okay. If you have people who say, okay, let's say Kevin Samuels, let's say he is in there, and he's saying, look, I want to hear from women so that we can give them so we can hear, so that people can hear what they're saying. And as you mentioned before, Bernard, that a lot of good has come from that, in the sense of a lot of knowledge where people are like, oh, I never knew that they want you to, even if after with all your education, they still want you to pay 100%, or that they're really not trying to work, or they would prefer that the burden falls on your shoulders more so, which is, which is fine, and which is what we kind of generally know anyways. So Kevin Samuels in that regard stated his particular goal, okay, and why he does that. Someone else states a goal as to why they're restricting, then it is also fine. If you have, for example, a country club that is a male-only space, there is no problem with that, in my opinion, because men are men, okay? Go to a playground, okay? And this is something that's silly. You may already see where I'm going with this. You can go to a playground in any middle school out there and watch the people playing. And you're going to see boys over there doing crazy boy stuff, maybe one or two tomboys, right, amongst them, and they're playing, doing their boy stuff. And then the girls are over there doing their girl stuff, okay? It's like, oh, do we want to go to those boys and be like, whoa, 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 equal access? What is this all-boy country club you're forming over here? No, 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 we don't like it. All of a sudden, when we become adults, we start acting like we're no longer mammals and no longer organisms and no longer have a nature. It's like, no, boys will be boys, women will be women. If you want to restrict certain access, or if you want to have a male-only space, fine. So that's the answer to the question.
All right. Good answer. Good answer. I always say it's channel by channel. Each content creator can do what they want to do as far as their own channel. People overthink it when it comes to that. So that's where I'm at with it. But thanks for the question, Nicer. Appreciate you. This is a crazy question. I did let it sit there for a while and didn't even read it. I don't even know is that even grounded in reality? I don't even understand it. Omega Drez, are you trolling? What's going on here?
No, let me read it. Ike, do you believe those of a culture that believe someone of your albino phenotype should be used as ritualistic resource, should be eliminated for acts of murder? I mean, yeah, I think that murder is murder, right? Well, okay.
Is he asking do you believe
it's a real question? It's a real, well, yeah, it sounds like a troll in the sense that, am I asking that, murder and dismemberment is a bad thing? Yes, I do believe that it is a bad thing to murder and dismember people and use them for rituals. And yes, they should be eliminated. But I think perhaps there's a deeper context to what he's saying, which is a cultural thing, because this is about cultural relativism. I always like to kind of bring a philosophical underpinning to things, which is like, okay, if this is their culture, right, who are we supposed to say that this is a bad thing? But let me tell you, it is not a culture, okay? It is not. It is a particular kind of outgrowth of some kind of weird, sick people that think that, oh, here's something new and novel over here, and perhaps I could use it to get some kind of a gain. And he's referring to in certain tribes and certain places, maybe Tanzania, for example, where albinos are hunted down, killed, dismembered, because people believe, just like, okay, the Chinese, but there's some obsession with the Chinese and things that'll give you sexual prowess, right? It is the rhino horn or the shark fin or whatever. Like, they have all kinds of things that they hunt down and kill so that you can be the man in bed. Same thing in this particular regard. They think, oh, well, the albino blood will make you rich or immortal or whatever. Look at this weird creature. It must have some special powers. But I would say no, it does not have the right to be claimed as a culture. There is no culture that believes that. It's just certain crazy folk in certain corners with certain superstitions taking advantage of certain things. Oh, so yes, they should be eliminated.
All right, he threw me for a loop. That's Omega Drez. He normally jokingly trolls with questions, but he's a mod. He's been here for a while. He's one of my originals, one of my day ones, pretty much. So he threw me for a loop with that one. I didn't know if he was asking a serious question, trolling. I didn't know what was going on, but yeah, gave him a good answer. All right, cool. All right, Ike, I got to thank you, man, for coming on here. You delivered a great show. You dropped a lot of knowledge and pearls of wisdom on it. So I definitely got to thank you for that. I also would like to thank everybody who liked, shared, subscribed. I saw new people in here, so I should have picked up some new subscribers as well. Ike should have picked up some new subscribers because his link probably should have been floating around in the chat a little bit longer. Somebody go ahead and drop it for the last time. Drop the link, somebody. Some of the mods drop the link as we get out of here. But anybody who liked, share, subscribe, hit the Cash App or the Super Chat or did anything to support the channel in any way, shape, or form, I'd like to thank you for doing your part to make this all possible today. So with that said, we're going to get out of here. Once again, Ike, thanks. Had a great show. Appreciate you coming through. And we are out of here. Peace.